For joining us, Paul.
Yeah, very nice program. Well done. Yeah.
Hello, thank you.
Paul.
Yeah, very nice program. Well done. Yeah.
And Tamara, just start the YouTube and you have the link on the chat if you want to share it. And I will start the webinar now.
Thank you.
Eh bien, bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à cette deuxième et dernière journée de notre 18e Forum international des ONG. Hier, nous avons posé les bases. Nous avons vu que le partenariat pour une éducation verte n'est pas qu'un simple concept, mais un mouvement en marche. Nous avons mesuré l'ambition des 4 piliers. Nous avons vu comment, de l'Estonie au Sénégal, l'école peut devenir un laboratoire vivant de la durabilité. Nous avons pu également découvrir le volontariat et des projets comme Seed of Change à Paris, qui étendent l'action climatique au cœur des territoires. En résumé, hier nous avons démontré que l'éducation ne se limite pas au mur de la classe, elle est dans la gouvernance de l'école, dans la résilience des quartiers et dans l'engagement de la jeunesse. Aujourd'hui, nous passons de la structure au contenu et de la sensibilisation à la compétence. Sans plus attendre, je vous propose que nous démarrions la 3e session consacrée au pilier Rendre vert chaque programme scolaire. Ce pilier est crucial car il touche au cœur du métier d'enseignant. Que transmet-on? Comment l'enseigne-t-on? Si nous voulons que chaque apprenant soit un acteur éclairé du climat, le changement climatique ne peut pas rester une option de fin de manuel. Il doit irriguer les maths, les sciences, la littérature et la formation professionnelle. Pour modérer cette session, j'ai le plaisir d'accueillir Gabriel Drueta. Gabriel est assistant de projet à l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie, membre actif également du groupe de travail jeunesse du comité de liaison. Il a été clé dans la construction de ce panel. Gabriel, tu as la parole.
Bonjour, merci Cyril pour la présentation. Excellencies, distinguished guests, and dear colleagues, so I'm pleased to welcome you to the first panel of the second day of the 18th International Forum of NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO. So in line with the program, this panel focuses on Pillar 2 of the Green Education Partnership, so greening every curriculum. This pillar aims to integrate climate change and sustainability into education from early childhood to vocational training and lifelong skills development. It addresses curricula, teaching materials, teaching practices, and learning assessment to ensure effective climate education. I'm pleased to introduce our 3 panelists and warmly thank them for joining us today. I will now switch to French. Tout d'abord, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir notre premier panéliste, Monsieur Eric Gouillardi, co-coordinateur du pilier. Monsieur Gouillardi est directeur de recherche au CNRS et professeur à l'Université de Reading. Il est actuellement président de l'Office for Climate Education, une organisation dédiée au développement de ressources en éducation au changement climatique, ainsi qu'à la mise en œuvre d'initiatives de formation professionnelle à destination des enseignants. Climatologue de renom, ses travaux de recherche portent sur la variabilité du climat tropical, le phénomène El Niño, les interactions entre l'océan et le climat, ainsi que sur le changement climatique. Dans ses fonctions, il a contribué au 5e et 6e rapport du GIEC. Il est par ailleurs membre du conseil scientifique auprès du ministère français de l'Éducation nationale, du groupe d'experts sur la littératie climatique conseillant le CDE dans le cadre des évaluations PISA et siège au comité d'éthique du CNRS. Bienvenue, Monsieur Gouillardi. Ensuite, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir professeur Zélim Kalbous. Monsieur Kalbous est professeur des universités et il est actuellement recteur de l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie, opérateur du sommet de la francophonie pour l'enseignement supérieur et la recherche, et premier réseau universitaire au monde, rassemblant plus de 1000 établissements membres dans 120 pays. Dans ses fonctions, le professeur Kalbous s'est affirmé comme un acteur de premier plan dans la promotion d'une diplomatie scientifique inclusive et équitable. Il était à l'origine de plusieurs plaidoyers en faveur d'une science au service du développement durable, intégrant les points de vue de la jeunesse. Il exerçait au cours de sa carrière de nombreuses fonctions de responsabilité académique et institutionnelle, parmi lesquelles il était directeur de l'Institut des hautes études commerciales, ainsi que ministre de l'enseignement supérieur et de la recherche scientifique et ministre de l'Éducation par intérim en Tunisie de 2016 à 2019. Bienvenue, professeur Kalbous. Enfin, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir Madame Maud Segers. Madame Segers est titulaire d'un master en éducation comparée et internationale, ainsi que d'un master et d'un certificat d'aptitude à l'enseignement secondaire supérieur. Elle est actuellement conseillère en stratégie éducative à l'échelle mondiale au sein de VVOB Education for Development, une organisation belge forte de plus de 40 ans d'expérience en matière de renforcement de la qualité des systèmes éducatifs en Afrique, en Asie et en Amérique du Sud. Au sein de VVOB, Maud Segers coordonne le programme phare Skillings for Sustainable Futures. À ce titre, Madame Segers apporte un appui technique et partenarial au programme mis en œuvre, notamment en Équateur et en Ouganda, avec une attention particulière portée à l'intégration des enjeux climatiques et du développement durable dans les pratiques pédagogiques, la formation professionnelle des enseignants, ainsi que les programmes nationaux. Bienvenue, Madame Segers. Un grand merci à nos trois panélistes d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Et sans plus tarder, j'ai le plaisir d'ouvrir ce panel en donnant la parole à Monsieur Eric Gouillardi, président de Office for Climate Education. Du coup, Monsieur Gouillardi, dans le cadre du partenariat, l'objectif est que 90% des pays aient des programmes scolaires verts d'ici à 2030. Pour soutenir les États membres et les partenaires du GEP, vous avez co-rédigé le guide des programmes scolaires verts qui définit l'éducation verte, en précise les principes fondamentaux et propose une feuille de route pour sa mise en œuvre. Pour commencer, pourriez-vous nous présenter les principes clés à considérer pour concevoir des curriculums verts, puis les étapes pour mettre en place une éducation verte à la fois efficace, inclusive et adaptée au contexte national? La parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Gabriel. Bonjour, mesdames, messieurs. C'est un plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. So I'm going to switch to English, going back to English, if that's with you, Gabriele. And making sure. All right, do you see my presentation? Hold on. Yeah. Can you see it? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Right. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share some evidence-based strategies for climate education as one of the indeed pillars of the Greening Education Partnership. So first, and I'm sure this was already covered many times, but clearly education is absolutely needed if we are to address the climate crisis, and it's really one of the core components of education for sustainable development that has been championed by UNESCO and many countries for decades now. And I like this quote of Stefania Giannini, who says that education is the most transformational climate adaptation action. Right, so there's obviously a strong demand for climate education, this was said, but little implementation. There are a number of reports that show there's very low or no integration of climate change in curricula, that a large majority, a huge majority of teachers believe that it's important to teach climate change, but less than 30% feel able to teach it. And we'll go understanding how we can address it. And a very low number actually of schools implement quality climate change education. So what we know is that climate change education must build on strong science education and also active pedagogies. This is really clearly in building on ESD. The science base of ESD is made even stronger in climate change education. First thing, of course, climate science is universal, but misconceptions are similar everywhere and often perpetuated by incorrect school books. What we know is that debunking misconceptions and practicing science activities is absolutely key to overcome this. And active pedagogies are more efficient, which means inquiry-based pedagogies, explicit teaching, understanding the nature of science. This has been shown, and sometimes active pedagogies are criticized, but it's not for them. It's basically because to put them into practice, we need proper professional development of teachers. Right, another thing that is really important is to go beyond the knowledge. And clearly it's not everybody, all the studies show us that it's not because you know about something that you're going to act about it. And so if the curricula, the education is based on knowledge-only approach, this creates anxiety and doesn't lead to action. This has been shown many times. So it's really important to work on pedagogical actions that will help develop self-efficacy. So again, project-based pedagogy, the role of playing games, other activities, interdimensional contact, all these really play a role to go beyond the knowledge approach. Now, of course, climate change in the classroom is not the place to change the world. Students are there to learn, so we have to be modest. And of course, projects can help self-efficacy, that each small success reinforces the positive perception that success is in this possible. And failing to implement an action will have a detrimental effect. For example, solar panels on the school are not the responsibility of the student in the school, but of the adults in the school. This is really important as part of the explicit education. Another really important part is the contextualization. The vital role of local and personally relevant climate issues to reduce the psychological distance. Showing a bear on a piece of ice in most of the students worldwide who've never met and will never meet such an animal is not really helpful. This helps also motivate students because it's their everyday and what they know, their everyday context. It develops a sense of responsibility and inspire action. So this contextualization is absolutely key. And of course, providing teachers with effective professional development is at the heart of all this. We need proper resources, but also, and that's the link with the pillar 3, and this is also showing that there's different pillars of the Greening Education Partnership are really work all together, and we're working across the work groups to ensure that. So effective teacher training, now there's more and more evidence of what works, is content-focused, incorporates active learning, support collaborations, uses model of effective practice, it's a hands-on activity, provide coaching, expert support for teachers that otherwise can feel a bit lonely, so networks of practice, offers feedback and reflection, and is of sustained duration. It's not just awareness with a 2-hour presentation or activity. It needs that the experience at the OCE, we need between 50 and 80 hours of professional development for teachers to change their professional practice to include not only the science, but also the pedagogy. Right, so as been discussed, clearly there's a really exciting international landscape for climate education. It started, the large impetus came from the Paris Agreement with the Article 12 and the Action for Climate Empowerment. And from Glasgow to Belém, really the COPs have been increasing the role of education. And for example, at the last COP, 150 countries announced that they would add education in their nationally determined contribution, the NDCs. So this is very exciting. Of course, the JEP, I won't go again into it. Really, the strong more than 100 countries, networking standards, pilot implementation, capacity building. Very exciting to see all these actors coming together. And also another potentially huge lever that we will have is the change of the PISA evaluation, which will add climate literacy in 2029. I'll come back to that in a minute. So I want to spend maybe a minute or two on the green curriculum guidance that was mentioned by Daniele. It's one of the main actions from the Pillar 2 on greening curriculum. So in this, we developed 6 concepts we call pillars of sustainability in 3 families: environmental, social, and economic. So of course, the climate science base, which is fundamental, but also that of the ecosystem and biodiversity, the resilience building and the climate justice on the social aspects, and the economic with the post-carbon economies and sustainable lifestyles. And for each of those 6 areas, we developed what were the expecting learning outcomes by age group, topic, and domain. So it really provides a guideline for many actors and countries to build their curricula. You see the different age group, and also with distinguish the cognitive, so as we were saying about the learning, the basics, but also the social, emotional, and the behavioral aspects, which are as important to develop our future citizens that will take decisions once they're adults. One important development is the PISA 2029 Climate Literacy Framework, which I think builds on this JEP green curriculum guidance, but also on the EU Green Comp and many other frameworks. And it's probably the latest incarnation of what are those competencies. And there are basically 4 families that, you can put different names, but they all boil down to the same thing. First is the ability to understand how the climate system works, how human action affects it, how climate change impacts people and ecosystems. Then, of course, it's the evidence-based reasoning and system thinking, understanding, making sense of data, graphicacy, all these aspects are essential. Then, of course, the capacity to evaluate evidence, information, and perspective, the different arguments, understanding the different registries of values, etc. And finally, last but not least, the agency to shape both individually and collectively sustainable future, desirable futures. This is really, I really encourage you to go and read this. It's a short framework, provides you, I think, a good incarnation of where we're at with the thinking and from the evidence base. Right, this is just the detail. I won't go into detail, but this for each component, we have 3 components out of the 4 competencies. For example, on this one, engaging is identifying, evaluating different type of claims about climate change, different perspective, values, and worldviews on climate change, and constructing arguments and communicating on climate change. These are things, all these things are as important to develop the skills of our future citizens. Right, I think that's all I wanted to share at this stage. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guillardi. Je vous remercie vraiment pour votre réponse très claire. Surtout, ça nous plonge vraiment au cœur du sujet d'aujourd'hui. Vous avez notamment cité, souligné 5 points essentiels pour une éducation verte, climatique. Elle doit être fondée sur les données probantes. Elle doit être contextualisée, inclusive, modeste surtout. Et si je peux ajouter aussi, soutenue au niveau institutionnel, à travers des partenariats et aussi à travers les institutions qui soutiennent sa mise en pratique. Et vraiment sur ça, je voulais me tourner maintenant vers Monsieur Calbous, sur du coup le soutien institutionnel, aussi le soutien politique et de plaidoyer. Du coup, j'aimerais me tourner vers vous, Monsieur professeur Slim Calbous, vous êtes recteur de l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie. Du coup, l'AUF inscrit son action dans des projets de coopération internationale entre établissements supérieurs et centres de recherche, mais aussi dans un dialogue institutionnel et interministériel de haut niveau. Dans le contexte des transformations environnementales et climatiques, 2 plaidoyers étudiants se distinguent, l'appel de Toulouse pour l'école de demain et la charte pour une transition énergie-climat dans l'enseignement supérieur en Europe. Quel message clé les jeunes francophones veulent-ils faire entendre à travers ces plaidoyers et comment l'AUF contribue-t-elle à amplifier leur voix auprès des décideurs politiques? La parole est à vous, monsieur le recteur.
Merci beaucoup, merci Gabriele, merci aux organisateurs de nous associer à ce beau panel et à cette belle réflexion pendant 2 jours sur un sujet qui nous tient très à cœur et qui aujourd'hui est en danger, je dirais, par certaines positions ici et là qui remettent en cause des éléments qu'on pensait absolument nécessaires et qui aujourd'hui, effectivement, remettent au premier plan le rôle de l'école et de la formation dans ce domaine. Alors, pour répondre à votre question, je vais inverser, c'est-à-dire je vais me permettre d'abord de vous dire comment on travaille à l'AUF, notamment sur ces questions, puis ensuite vous faire peut-être un résumé rapide de ce que nos études, nos interactions avec les jeunes sortent comme arguments très intéressants d'ailleurs sur les positions de la jeunesse, parce il faut les écouter, ils sont parfois beaucoup plus sensibles que nous, que notre génération, que la génération précédente à des questions qui aujourd'hui apparaissent effectivement extraordinairement importantes. Alors, l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie aborde la question de l'éducation et de l'enseignement supérieur en général avec une approche très systémique. En fait, il faut parler avec tous les acteurs. Nous avons 2 niveaux d'intervention, un niveau institutionnel et un niveau individuel. Au niveau institutionnel, c'est évidemment les ministères, les universités, les centres de recherche, les partenaires institutionnels comme l'UNESCO. Et là, il s'agit plutôt des approches de plaidoyer, notamment les plaidoyers politiques, justement, des politiques publiques, les approches méthodologiques, et puis l'accompagnement aux réformes de systèmes éducatifs et universitaires. Je vous donne quelques exemples très rapidement qui touchent au sujet qui nous intéresse aujourd'hui. Par exemple, au niveau ministériel, nous avons réussi à avoir un document qui s'intitule Le Manifeste pour une diplomatie scientifique francophone, qui est aujourd'hui co-signé par 43 gouvernements et qui justement fait une sorte de classement, une cartographie des priorités de la coopération scientifique. Euh, et parmi ces priorités, évidemment, on retrouve en très bonne place la question du développement durable et de l'éducation verte. Les ministres de l'enseignement supérieur de l'espace francophone, aujourd'hui, ont une structure que l'AUF met en place, une rencontre annuelle de ces ministres qui sont des ministres européens, africains, asiatiques, d'Amérique latine, qui viennent vraiment de partout. Et la seule rencontre annuelle qu'ils ont, c'est la conférence ministérielle que l'AUF organise et qui permet justement de faire de la transversalité en termes de coopération scientifique sur ce sujet-là. Donc il y a un travail qui est fait important à ce niveau. Le deuxième niveau institutionnel, c'est évidemment nos membres. Vous l'avez dit, nous avons plus de 1000 universités et centres de recherche qui sont membres chez nous, ce qui fait que c'est vraiment le plus gros réseau universitaire au monde et nous en sommes extrêmement fiers. Mais donc, pourquoi avoir ce réseau mondial? C'est évidemment pour créer des consortiums, mobiliser les compétences en fonction des sujets des uns et des autres, en fonction des spécialités des uns et des autres. Et c'est ce que nous faisons. Donc, il y a un travail aussi de spécialisation, de mobilisation des compétences au niveau institutionnel des universités. Le troisième niveau, toujours institutionnel, c'est les partenaires. Alors, je vais parler plus particulièrement de l'UNESCO parce que c'est aujourd'hui la grande organisation qui nous réunit. Et puis, alors pour dire d'abord que nous avons fini par signer un très bel accord stratégique entre l'AUF et l'UNESCO l'année dernière, qui, en fin de compte, est un résultat de plusieurs années de coopération sur le terrain. Nous travaillons, nos équipes, avec l'UNESCO un peu partout dans le monde, avec des projets vraiment très concrets sur le sujet, notamment l'accompagnement des pays du Sud dans la réforme de leur système éducatif et universitaire. Les équipes de l'AUF et de l'UNESCO travaillent souvent en étroite collaboration sur le terrain. Et avec le temps, ce travail de terrain est remonté au niveau du top management. Et aujourd'hui, on a un accord cadre excellent. Bien entendu, nous sommes parmi les ONG qui participent à la Coalition mondiale pour l'éducation activement, et pour nous, c'est très important. Et puis, notre filiale européenne à laquelle tu travailles, cher Gabriele, est aujourd'hui donc membre du comité de liaison des ONG, ce qui est pour nous une grande fierté. Et puis voilà, vous êtes avec nous au comité de pilotage de ce 18e Forum international des ONG. Donc voilà, l'aspect institutionnel est important. Alors l'aspect individuel, c'est vraiment de la mobilisation, de la formation et de l'accompagnement. Alors, quand je dis individuel, c'est-à-dire le travail avec les enseignants, le travail avec les chercheurs, le travail avec les étudiants. En fait, ce sont nos partenaires essentiels en termes individuels. Enseignants-chercheurs, c'est réseautage et mobilisation. On met en réseau les compétences en fonction des sujets qui sont sur la table, sur lesquels nous devons faire des études, nous devons faire des formations, nous devons faire des actions concrètes. Et puis, on mobilise toujours avec les contacts et le réseau que nous avons, les plus éminents experts au niveau mondial. J'arrive à la jeunesse et aux étudiants. Nous faisons beaucoup d'études auprès d'eux. On les interroge régulièrement sur leurs intentions, leurs préférences, leurs contraintes, leurs peurs parfois. Et puis, un gros travail d'encadrement s'est mis en place maintenant depuis 3 ans. Parce qu'on a vu justement qu'il y avait une mauvaise connaissance de système éducatif, mauvaise connaissance des approches de coopération au niveau international. Et ces études nous ont poussé à structurer la jeunesse. Alors, on a demandé aux 1000 universités qui sont chez nous aujourd'hui lorsqu'ils veulent créer un club dédié justement à la réflexion sur l'avenir de la jeunesse, ils peuvent le faire. On a appelé ce réseau le réseau CLEF, Club Leader Étudiants Francophones. Aujourd'hui, ce réseau a plus de 200 clubs sur 70 pays, donc c'est devenu un club gigantesque. Et d'ailleurs, pour mieux gérer, pour qu'il y ait une gouvernance transparente, on les a transformés en une association. Donc aujourd'hui, on a l'Association internationale des CLEF. Cette association donc, a plusieurs milliers d'étudiants et on les fait travailler, on les accompagne sur leurs réflexions thématiques. Alors, ils sont assez libres, les étudiants, de choisir les thèmes sur lesquels ils veulent travailler en priorité, mais je peux vous dire que au bout de 3 ans de travail avec eux, il y a 2 thèmes qui se détachent de tous les autres, parce qu'ils peuvent faire même des activités de loisirs, de travail, de formation, d'études, ce qu'ils veulent. Mais il y a 2 thèmes qui se détachent très clairement. Le premier, c'est la question cruciale de l'entrepreneuriat et de l'employabilité, c'est-à-dire leur avenir professionnel. Et le deuxième, c'est le développement durable, ce qui démontre justement l'intérêt de cette jeunesse qui est beaucoup plus élevé que l'intérêt des générations précédentes. Alors, tu as cité, Gabriel, 2 exemples, effectivement. Moi, je vais rester sur des exemples parce qu'ils sont emblématiques. On fait travailler les jeunes pour exprimer ce qu'ils pensent, puis de les aider à le structurer pour que ce soit des documents exploitables et des documents surtout que nous portons avec eux comme des plaidoyers auprès des décideurs politiques pour changer un petit peu les systèmes. Tu as cité effectivement, donc en 2023, à Sofia, il y a une rencontre d'une cinquantaine de leaders qui ont travaillé sur une charte de la transition énergie-climat dans l'enseignement supérieur. C'était assez spécifique. Et l'année d'après, 2024, c'était à Toulouse. On a élargi le champ. Là, c'est une réflexion mondiale. On avait des étudiants venant du monde entier. Et puis, avec une approche très démocratique, je tiens à le signaler, c'est très, très important pour nous. Nous avons les 200 clubs, finalement, qui sont répartis sur 70 pays, ont fait une élection pour élire le représentant national. Donc, tous les clubs d'un pays élisent le représentant national et les 65 ou 70 leaders élus nationaux pour représenter l'ensemble des clubs, donc, ont travaillé pendant 3 jours en immersion totale, cogitation, alors que le travail de réflexion à l'intérieur des clubs a duré à peu près 4 mois sur la question de l'école de demain. Sans contrainte, si vous avez un bâton magique aujourd'hui, vous voulez faire l'école idéale, elle serait comment? Et c'était la question qu'on leur a posée. Donc, ils ont réfléchi et échangé pendant 4 mois. Puis après, en immersion, les leaders élus sont venus à notre grand événement annuel qui a eu lieu à Toulouse en 2024. Et ils ont rédigé l'appel de Toulouse de l'école de demain. Un document que je vous appelle à voir, qui est évidemment téléchargé gratuitement sur le site de l'AUF, mais vraiment très intéressant sur enfin, ça reflète ce que pensent les jeunes, mais en même temps, à la fois leurs rêves, leur espoir et puis leurs craintes. Alors, on trouve des sujets sans surprise pour venir au contenu de ce que nous disent la jeunesse. Sans surprise, quand ils parlent beaucoup du numérique, la transformation numérique pour eux est essentielle. Donc, ils nous parlent du développement des compétences numériques, de l'innovation pédagogique dans ce domaine, de l'IA, etc. Ils nous parlent évidemment beaucoup d'emploi, de leur carrière, de ce qu'ils vont faire après l'école, après l'université, adapter les compétences qu'ils reçoivent à l'école par rapport aux nouvelles demandes du marché de l'emploi aujourd'hui. Donc, on retrouve ça. Troisième thème, c'est un thème qui nous a aussi un petit peu questionné. Ils ont beaucoup parlé du vivre ensemble. C'est les jeunes qui nous interpellent là-dessus. Et ça, c'est une claque que nous avons pris. Ils nous donnent, ben, vous, enseignants, vous, école, est-ce que vous nous parlez encore de citoyenneté, de notion de solidarité, de la question de l'humanitaire? Et en fait, ils nous mettent devant un peu les défis que l'évolution du monde aujourd'hui nous met en face. Et puis, quatrième transition, on nous parle beaucoup de la transition inclusive, donc l'inclusivité au sens de la garantie de l'accès à tous pour l'éducation, la notion de comment définir la notion de qualité de l'éducation lorsqu'on est dans des pays avec des niveaux de développement très disparates. Et la cinquième transformation, c'est la transformation écologique, intégrer l'éducation et le développement durable et la résilience notamment climatique dans l'ensemble des cursus. Mais pour finir cette première intervention et conclure un petit peu votre question, je vous dirais que l'analyse de contenu de l'ensemble des discours que cette jeunesse nous dit, on peut retirer trois messages clés que la jeunesse matraque vraiment, et de tous bords, de toute culture. Premier message, c'est que nous, jeunes, nous voulons être impliqués et au centre du processus de l'éducation verte. Ils se voient comme acteurs principaux et non pas juste comme consommateurs, je dirais, entre guillemets, de l'approche. Donc, ils demandent à ce que la vie estudiantine soit beaucoup plus impliquée dans la question. Alors, notamment, il y a un plébiscite, là, hein, l'activité associative dédiée à ce genre de questions, par exemple. Mais en tout cas, la notion d'engagement des étudiants sur les questions donc, environnementales et climatiques est au centre. Ils nous disent aussi qu'ils ont besoin de partenariats renforcés au-delà de l'école. C'est-à-dire que leur école doit ouvrir les portes pour que la société civile puisse venir plus dans les enceintes universitaires et non pas rester uniquement entre profs et étudiants. Et ça, cette ouverture d'esprit plébiscitée est très importante. Et puis la participation des apprenants à la gouvernance. Ils nous disent, faites-nous participer, aidez-nous à ce que les politiques nous écoutent avant de prendre leurs décisions. Ça, c'est très intéressant aussi à écouter. Donc, premier message, nous voulons être plus engagés, faites-nous participer, faites-nous impliquer dans vos réflexions, dans vos décisions. Deuxième grand message de la jeunesse qui ressort de nos études, c'est que l'école doit se transformer avec tous les acteurs. Les jeunes ne peuvent pas être la seule cible. Ils nous parlent beaucoup de leurs professeurs, de leurs enseignants qui ne sont pas aussi sensibilisés qu'eux à la question. Comment voulez-vous qu'un enseignant transmette un plaidoyer ou transmettre un savoir-faire qu'il ne le possède pas lui-même? Et donc, les enseignants, les étudiants insistent beaucoup sur la formation des formateurs, sur la formation des enseignants, la sensibilisation, sur le fait que les enseignants eux-mêmes doivent acquérir de nouvelles compétences avant de pouvoir les transmettre à cette jeunesse. Dans cette aussi approche multi-acteurs, ils nous parlent beaucoup de l'intégration du contenu dans les cours. Alors, ils disent qu'au lieu que ça soit juste des modules de questionnement sur l'écologie, des modules juste de sensibilisation, nous voulons avoir plus des modules d'action. Dites-nous concrètement comment on peut mieux faire, concrètement comment on peut transformer les choses. Et donc, ils voudraient avoir des cours, plus de cours pratiques que de cours théoriques. Et ils trouvent que la plupart des cours dédiés à ces sujets sont des sujets beaucoup plus dans le beau discours, beaucoup plus dans la théorie, la sensibilisation, ce qui est nécessaire. Mais pour eux, ce n'est plus suffisant. Ils veulent être dans l'action et non pas juste écouter et subir. Euh, et puis, toujours dans cette multi-acteurs, ils nous disent que nos universités doivent donner l'exemple. Souvent, on reçoit des cours qui ne sont pas appliqués dans nos propres campus. Et donc, il y a aussi un plaidoyer qui ressort très clairement sur le fait qu'il faut intégrer la sobriété des infrastructures, les outils pédagogiques au niveau des universités, là où ils apprennent la notion de l'éducation verte. Donc, premier message, nous intégrer plus, on veut être encore plus engagé, pensez à nous. Deuxième, multi-acteurs, on n'est pas seul, il faut que ceux qui nous entourent aient cette même sensibilité. Et puis, troisième et dernier message clé qui ressort aussi, c'est qu'il faut dépasser les beaux discours et agir plus. Ça rejoint un petit peu leur demande d'engagement. Ils disent par exemple, beaucoup nous parlent, pourquoi il n'y a pas de label des universités qui seraient plus vertes, des universités qui seraient plus respectables, qui respectent plus ces questions d'environnement, de climat, etc. Donc, il y a beaucoup de discussions là-dessus, sur la mise en valeur des stratégies de transition écologique qui sont appliquées ici et là. Et donc, les écoles qui mettraient ces stratégies devraient être valorisées, mises en valeur. Et puis, sans grande surprise, les jeunes aussi nous parlent d'argent, le nerf de la guerre, qui aujourd'hui manque à tout le monde dans ce domaine, vu toutes les crises économiques que nous subissons. Et donc, ils nous parlent de ça. Mais ce qui est intéressant, c'est que ça revient à l'engagement citoyen de ces jeunes. Ils nous disent, euh, il ne faut plus dissocier la question de la solidarité de la question du financement. Si il n'y a pas de partage de la richesse pour que on puisse sauver collectivement la planète, ça ne peut pas être une planète des riches et une planète des moins riches, une planète de ceux qui peuvent et ceux qui ne peuvent pas. Donc, ce qui est très intéressant, c'est qu'ils placent la question du financement. Tout le monde parle de financement, mais eux, ces jeunes, ils placent la question du financement indexé à la question de la solidarité pour un développement commun. C'est des messages très, très forts qui ressortent de cette jeunesse. Donc, voilà. Donc, nous apprenons à les écouter mieux et puis surtout à les accompagner. C'est un petit peu ça, notre rôle.
Merci,
Voilà.
monsieur le recteur, pour votre réponse très inspirante et aussi votre engagement en faveur de la jeunesse et de ces plaidoyers. Si je peux vraiment euh, synthétiser tout ce que vous avez dit avec une phrase, on peut dire que la jeunesse maintenant montre qu'elle souhaite devenir actrice et non spectatrice de son futur. Du coup, sans plus tarder, je voulais maintenant donner la parole à Madame Maud Segers pour avoir un peu plus un exemple concret du terrain de ce qu'il est possible de faire pour mettre en place une éducation climatique. Du coup, Madame Segers, conseillère en stratégie éducative à l'échelle mondiale au sein de VVOB Education for Development. VVOB, effectivement, soutient depuis longtemps l'éducation dans les contextes en développement et intervient dans l'éducation environnementale et climatique. Du coup, pourrez-vous nous expliquer votre approche pour intégrer l'éducation au changement climatique dans différents contextes et niveaux d'enseignement, les finalités de vos initiatives pédagogiques, ainsi que les impacts que vous observez sur les enseignants, les apprenants et les communautés? La parole est à vous.
Thank you, Gabriele, for the question, and thank you to the Liaison Committee for bringing us all together. So I'll explain VVOB's approach using examples from our work in two of our partner countries, Ecuador and South Africa. In South Africa, we started to work on climate education and education for sustainable development in 2019 through the Keep It Cool project. And in Ecuador, we started at the end of 24 through Cambiar. We are not seeing the slides, but that's also okay. Perfect. Thank you. So by and large, I would say that VVOB uses the 10-step approach that is promoted by the Greening Education Partnership in the Greening Curriculum Guidance, so the guidance note produced by Pillar 2. In reality, I would say that the journey is not quite as linear as we might think. So some steps happen in a different order, or some of the steps can be clustered. But the description in the guidance of that process is quite a helpful lens, and it has helped us think through and improve our approach. We indeed start, as is suggested by that guidance note as well, with a review of existing policies to find entry points for greening the curriculum. In Ecuador, the Plan Natura of the Ministry of Education was critical in that. It's a plan that promotes education for sustainable development as a fundamental element of quality education. And its objective is to promote the participation of the educational community in designing solutions for climate and ecological challenges at the local level. And in South Africa, it's the curriculum assessment policy statements that have already integrated or included climate change and sustainability in subjects from grades 1 to 12. So those were for us perfect entry points found in those countries. That review, in reality, we carry it out together with our government partners, who are the first stakeholders that VVOB engages in this process, specifically the Ministry of Education in Ecuador and the Department of Basic Education in South Africa. In both countries, we have also brought on board the ministry or the department that is responsible for environment, and in Ecuador also the Ministry of Agriculture, because the focus of Cambiar is on greening agricultural education and training. In addition, we also engage with professional development providers, such as the University of the Americas and Fundisa for Change, which is a consortium of 9 universities in South Africa, because they already have expertise on climate education and ESD. And then there are other more technical partners, I would say, that join this process, like FAO in Ecuador or Green Matter in South Africa. And then together with these partners, we choose the preferred curriculum strategy. And that also includes for us reflecting on which pedagogical approaches will be promoted. In Ecuador, so 2 different approaches you will see here. So in Ecuador, we really chose a subject approach with agriculture as the so-called carrier subjects. So all the technical subjects of the agriculture family are being greened, and that is being done through project-based learning and by also infusing content knowledge on climate change. In South Africa, we started with a cross-curricular approach. So there we can with an approach that promotes again a type of project-based learning, which is called curriculum activated change projects in the South African context. In the initial phase, we focused on teachers from grade 7 to 9. And in our current phase, we are really also deepening this with a carrier subject that is called life orientation in grade 8. Of course, we always start from the official, the existing national curriculum. We are not going to do wholesale curriculum reforms. Together with our partners, we then develop teaching and learning support materials that are curriculum aligned. We pilot them together with teachers, so teachers test the materials in their classrooms before they are finalized and then approved. So even in that piloting, there is already some small scale teacher training happening as well. And for those who are interested, the QR code brings you to a whole set of TLSM that was developed in South Africa. There we already have a package of 8 materials that was developed, tested together with Fundisa for Change and Green Matter. The Department for Basic Education has approved it. And the assessment of those projects, of the change project, is now also included in the official assessment system, which involves an assessment at the end of term 3 of the school year. In Ecuador, we are at a little bit of an earlier stage, but 83 teachers from the Andes region are also involved in a small-scale blended course on project-based learning. Local community actors, such as associations of agroecological farmers, take an active role in that course, specifically when it comes to supporting teachers in identifying real-world challenges related to agriculture, climate change, and environmental sustainability that then ultimately teachers and students will take up through project-based learning. And in partnership with the Office for Climate Climate Education, we are also contextualizing some of the materials in the OCE arsenal to make sure that scientifically correct knowledge about, for instance, soils and climate change is being built. And then I'm glad to hear that students are calling for teacher professional development, and we couldn't agree more to see those teachers, those practices and the TLSM being taken up in as many classrooms as possible. We invest in quality continuous professional development, which is also then a key channel through which teaching materials are being disseminated. There too, we work through the existing system so that the professional development is properly approved. Teachers can obtain so-called CPD points and credits for successful completion. And then again, depending on the context, that package looks a little bit different. In South Africa, it's a combination of online courses, available through the DBE online learning platform and in-person professional communities of teachers across schools. And in Ecuador, VVOB has also developed a set of online courses offered through the Ministry of Education's Me Capacito platform. And we are then also piloting that blended course. And it's really through the CPD that teachers are motivated and supported to infuse climate change and environmental sustainability in the existing curriculum. And so for us, the teachers are really the change agents here. They are the ones who are practically greening the curriculum through their teaching and the learning that they organize. Importantly, of course, we want to see that local relevance. And in fact, that is also the action-based or the action-oriented methodology of project-based learning is exactly what we see, and it makes the enthusiasm of teachers and students quite high. So how do we see that? First of all, we see very high completion and success rates in the online courses, which is not an easy thing to achieve. And we see a serious uptick in the number of teachers that are actually implementing thanks to the courses. So in South Africa, for example, we see before the professional development, about 25% of schools are doing project-based learning related to climate change or environmental sustainability. After the professional development, that rises to 90%. So it's really the support to teachers and the materials and the action-oriented aspect of project-based learning that causes this motivation and then also bigger implementation, of course. And in Ecuador, we are seeing similar things evolving. So there, of course, we are at an earlier stage, but we have already created, together with the Ministry of Education, a special category around agriculture and climate change in what is called the Feria Nacional CREA. It's an innovation fair for teachers and students, where students present or showcase their results from project-based learning every year. And this year, or in 2025, we had an agriculture and climate change category for the first time, and already we had more than 35 submissions. So yeah, when the presentations are shared, you can find some videos of these projects, which are quite exciting.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Segers. Je vous remercie surtout pour avoir vraiment présenté ces trois projets très inspirants. Enfin, ces deux projets, pardon, très inspirants comme Keep It Cool et Cambiar. Ce que j'ai retenu un peu de votre présentation, surtout, c'est que en fait, vos projets sont co-créés, adaptés aux contextes locaux et qu'ils reposent surtout sur une forte stratégie partenariale et aussi qu'ils poursuivent des objectifs spécifiques selon les contextes d'intervention. Du coup, sans plus tarder, parce qu'on a pris un peu de retard, je voulais me tourner de nouveau vers Monsieur Guillardi, président de l'Office for Climate Education. Et en fait, je voulais un peu savoir de votre côté, en tant que, enfin, par rapport à votre rôle comme de co-coordinateur du pilier 2, mais aussi comme président de l'Office for Climate Education, quel est selon vous le rôle de la société civile et des ONG au sein du partenariat? Et surtout, comment vous imaginez l'évolution de ce partenariat et aussi de la collaboration avec l'UNESCO. Je vous prie de rester sur les 4 minutes et la parole est à vous, Monsieur Guillardi.
Thank you, Daniel. I will be short on this one. Well, basically, I think the role of NGOs is absolutely central in the Greening Education Partnership. If you look at the missions of the JEP, which is networking, best practice exchange, capacity building, standards and guidance documents for each pillar and the evidence base, pilot implementation projects, support for capacity building. The capacity building is both the support but also webinars, and the monitoring through the MIS and the dashboard. I think NGOs are key actors for each of those missions. They will provide the local context to do both the capacity building, to go beyond the school, as was rightly mentioned before. It's important that to work in the the school and its environment. So to provide again the youth with a systemic vision of the issues, not a narrow one or just having a disconnect between what happens in the school and what happens outside. Of course, the contextualization we saw was essential, and the co-construction is better done with NGOs or local actors. This is really important. Of course, working with the educators, I think here we have to, when we say we have to be modest, at the same time, we have to be reminding that the professionals at school, the teachers, as was just mentioned by Maud as well, that and NGOs, when they intervene in the classroom, should work in co-construction. The teachers shouldn't leave the classroom to the NGO or vice versa. They need to work together, really bringing their expertise. Of course, NGOs usually have agility, fundraising capacities that ministries of education will not necessarily have, those schools will not necessarily have, so they can work together and can work together using those strengths. And also the link with the ministries. In many of those NGOs have links with ministries. This was nicely shown just a minute ago by Maud. And just to finish my few minutes, I want to give you the example of the ARISE project that is led by the Office for Climate Education in 3 countries in Africa. And you see that, so this is a large project for 4 years, working with the Development Bank, AFD, but also the partnership with NGOs is absolutely essential and the heart of the project. And this was a project 2 years in the making, because we have to identify the local partners that would share the values and really provide capacity building for the local actors, co-constructing the resources, the professional development of teachers. They know the local ground, and also having the link with the ministry. So I think this is to me, in a few minutes, what I would really how I would stress the role of these NGOs in the Greening Education Partnership.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Guillardi, pour votre réponse très claire et surtout concise. C'était très intéressant et surtout, si je dois retenir quelques éléments de votre réponse, je dirais que il faut que du coup les ONG jouent un rôle. Enfin, les ONG sont importantes dans ce contexte parce qu'ils amènent le contexte local. Ils amènent aussi la communauté autour de l'école, en fait, et surtout sont très importants pour tout ce qui relève des plaidoyers institutionnels avec les ministères, surtout qui sont après on peut dire les change makers, pour intégrer des curriculums verts dans les écoles.
Tout à
Merci
fait.
encore. Maintenant, je voulais me tourner vers le professeur Zdim Kalbous, recteur de l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie. En fait, vous avez présenté tout à l'heure la double mission de l'agence en tant qu'agence exécutive et aussi réseau universitaire, qui joue un rôle clé dans l'innovation pédagogique. Et je voulais savoir si vous avez des exemples concrets de programmes et instruments ou initiatives que les établissements membres de l'AUF mettent en place pour intégrer l'éducation et le développement durable. Et surtout, toujours dans l'idée de la question que je posais à M. Guillardi, comment le partenariat avec l'UNESCO permettrait-il de renforcer l'efficacité, la visibilité et la portée de ces initiatives au niveau national et international? La parole est à vous, Monsieur le recteur.
Merci beaucoup. Ben, oui, alors les instruments sont nombreux que nous développons, puisque nous sommes quand même présents dans 120 pays, et donc il faut avoir des approches à la fois standardisantes pour un certain nombre de grandes orientations, mais aussi très adaptées localement en fonction de l'environnement de chaque pays, de chaque région dans laquelle nous sommes. Mais je dirais qu'il y a 3 grandes composantes en termes de méthode. La première, c'est la plus évidente, c'est l'ADN même de l'AUF, c'est toute la mobilisation des compétences mondiales en réseau. Nous avons une quarantaine de réseaux que nous soutenons à l'AUF. Les réseaux sont institutionnels, donc c'est entre 20 jusqu'à 100 universités qui participent dans ces universités au centre de recherche, bien entendu, qui participent à ces réseaux-là. Et je citerai les 2 derniers réseaux que nous avons créés en lien direct avec le sujet qui nous réunit aujourd'hui. C'était 2 réseaux créés en 2024. Ils ont maintenant un an et demi. Le premier dans la formation et la recherche. Nous avons lancé le réseau universitaire francophone pour l'innovation pédagogique et les sciences de l'éducation, justement. Et on a mis en place donc une réflexion sur quelles sont les innovations qui doivent accompagner la transformation de l'école aujourd'hui. Et bien entendu, les sujets qui nous préoccupent aujourd'hui sont au centre et parmi les sujets les plus demandés. Nous avons aussi des réseaux plus sur la question de la gouvernance. Et en 2024 également, nous avons lancé le réseau des universités francophones responsables et inclusives. C'est un peu en réponse à la critique que la jeunesse nous faisait sur le fait que les campus eux-mêmes doivent être un exemple dans leur gestion, dans leur gouvernance pour pouvoir enseigner ces principes-là. Et donc, nous avons aujourd'hui lancé un réseau qui réfléchit juste sur les moyens pour rendre nos campus plus inclusifs. Alors, ça, c'est la première, la première méthode. Donc, mobilisation de l'expertise, mise en réseau au niveau international, transversalité de l'approche et adaptation aux spécificités locales. Le deuxième effet qu'on travaille, c'est on travaille beaucoup sur la négociation internationale parce qu'il y a beaucoup de financements de gré à gré, mais c'est pas facile de les avoir parce que tout le monde est dessus. Il y a la rareté des ressources aujourd'hui. Et donc, on fait beaucoup de travail sur, donc, avec des compétences qui sont dans le réseau et avec les compétences internes à l'administration pour aller chercher des fonds sur des grands bailleurs. Alors, je citerai un exemple avec l'Agence française de développement, l'AFD en France. On a un projet qui s'appelle Apprendre. C'est un gros projet structurant de plus de 30 millions d'euros sur 25 pays. Et ce projet a pour rôle d'accompagner ces 25 pays d'Afrique à accompagner la transformation de leur école selon leur stratégie. C'est ça ce qui est très intéressant, c'est qu'on n'arrive pas avec des recettes toutes prêtes pour dire bah, il faut faire ça, 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 ça comme une norme absolue, non discutable, mais plutôt on fait d'abord avec eux un diagnostic de ce qui est fait et pas fait chez eux, et puis ensuite on décide de l'approche qui va être adoptée dans ce pays-là plutôt que dans celui-là, dans l'accompagnement à la transformation de l'école. Nous avons aussi eu une très belle négociation avec la Banque mondiale. C'est un projet, lui, plus spécifique. Au Burundi, nous avons un projet qui s'appelle Soleil Burundi, où on focalise plus sur la mise en place de formations en énergie renouvelable. Parce que le soleil existe, c'est pas ce qui manque, mais enfin, les compétences pour exploiter ce soleil ne sont pas là. Donc là, c'est vraiment un besoin spécifique auquel on répond. On a aussi un très beau projet dans lequel on participe avec d'autres acteurs qui s'appelle Kix Afrique 21. C'est un projet qui est financé par le Centre de recherche et développement international du Canada. Là, vous voyez, on a un financement français, canadien, Banque mondiale, donc c'est vraiment très, très varié. Et ce projet, justement, dans une vingtaine de pays africains également, travaille plus sur les questions de valeurs, donc la question de l'égalité des genres à l'école, la lutte de l'abondance scolaire, sur la continuité éducative aussi en situation de conflit. Et donc, c'est des sujets vraiment très délicats parfois à traiter, mais qui sont aujourd'hui traités grâce à des financements suite à des négociations internationales. Donc, réseautage, mobilisation d'expertise, négociation internationale des projets de gré à gré. Et puis après, il y a comme toutes les organisations comme nous, il y a les appels à financement international qui sont des appels souvent compétitifs. Mais nous, ce qu'on fait pour maximiser le taux d'acceptation et de succès, c'est qu'on fait des petits projets sur fonds propres avec des partenaires pour créer ce qu'on appelle l'effet de levier. Donc, on construit un projet. Ce projet, il est affiné au fur et à mesure parce que, pour qu'il soit vraiment complet. Et au bout de 1 an, 2 ans, ces petits fonds d'amorçage permettent de mieux structurer le projet. Et une fois que le projet est mature, on va chercher des fonds, par exemple sur les appels européens ou les appels d'autres organismes à fonds compétitifs. Je citerai un des derniers appels que nous avons pu décrocher, et tu le connais très bien, Gabriele, c'est le projet Terrascape, qui est un projet destiné à la Côte d'Ivoire, Sénégal et Cameroun. Et c'est un très, très beau projet parce qu'il va mettre en place des masters de très haut niveau dans une dizaine d'universités sur la télédétection et les systèmes d'information géographique pour permettre justement l'amélioration de la gestion, la capacité de renforcer la gestion des catastrophes naturelles. Donc, vous voyez, en fait, il y a les aspects plus structurants d'accompagnement, et puis il y a des projets parfois très pointus, c'est un besoin spécifique de tel ou tel pays. Voilà. Et pour finir, la dernière phrase que je dirais, c'est que dans tout ce travail, souvent, l'UNESCO, comme je l'ai dit à mon introduction, est partenaire avec nous sur le terrain. Mais ce qui est intéressant, c'est que depuis l'année dernière, donc 2025, a été l'année où nous avons décidé d'institutionnaliser ce partenariat avec l'AUF plutôt que de faire une petite action ici et là. Nous avons aujourd'hui un comité de pilotage mixte qui permet de réfléchir pour comment euh, institutionnaliser la coopération, ne pas être sur les mêmes projets et être plutôt complémentaires sur le terrain pour avancer plus vite. Voilà ce que je peux dire par rapport à cette question. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, monsieur le recteur, pour cette réponse très claire et surtout pour avoir montré les synergies entre les initiatives de l'AUF et celles du partenariat qui répondent tout à fait aux priorités de l'UNESCO. Maintenant, je voulais me tourner vers Madame Maud Segers pour de nouveau lui demander un peu quel est le rôle qui joue le partenariat avec les communautés locales et les institutions territoriales. Et surtout, comment le partenariat pour une éducation verte et le travail de l'UNESCO peuvent-ils contribuer à renforcer l'efficacité et la portée durable de ces initiatives? Et vu qu'on est un peu en retard avec, avec ce panel, je voudrais déjà vous demander, Madame Segers, une question que je vois posée par le public, et c'est celle de, selon vous, avec votre expérience de terrain, euh, comment c'est possible de passer de certaines petites expériences de court terme à des initiatives et des programmes qui visent le long terme. La parole est à vous, Madame Segers.
Thank you. And maybe I'll shorten my answer as well. And first of all, as an NGO member, encourage other NGOs as well to join. For us, the partnership has been quite important in terms, well, you already heard it, that I referred to the guidelines and being involved also in the development of some of these guidance documents. It really helps you improve your thinking and improve your implementation. So that is always very welcome, of course. The fact that the partnership brings together multiple stakeholders, actors working on the same thematics. You find allies, co-implementing partners, and new partnerships, which is phenomenal. And of course, the very important advocacy work of the partnership, the presence of the high-level engagement with ministers and annually at the COPs to continue to expand the engagement of member states and to ensure that climate education and education for sustainability get on the agenda still in many cases, but also stay there, because that is a constant effort. And then to respond to the question from the audience, and it's an excellent one, because often we stay quite small in our small scale implementation. So for VVOB, the pathway to scale for us is really through teacher professional development. And then of course teacher professional development can also stay small scale. So for us, really working together with the Ministry of Education and one or several, mostly several professional development providers that are accredited, recognized, high quality is absolutely crucial. And so strengthening those systems really and infusing in systems that already exist and can take innovations to scale is for us the way to go, I would say.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Segers. Et vraiment, c'est très intéressant parce qu'en plus, c'était partie de la discussion de hier de comment institutionnaliser à travers des partenariats l'éducation au changement climatique pour passer d'une gestion de petits projets à vraiment une gestion systémique et plus institutionnalisée. Je remercie aussi le public pour vos questions. Malheureusement, on n'a pas pu prendre plusieurs questions, mais je vous invite à poursuivre les échanges via les chats ou par mail. Je vois que plusieurs membres du public ont demandé vos contacts mail. Ils vont être partagés si les panélistes le souhaitent. Et avant de passer à la prochaine session, et pour conclure ce panel, je voudrais vraiment avoir une réponse très courte de chacun de nos panélistes. Pour conclure cette question, du coup, je voulais vous demander quel message clé souhaiterez-vous adresser à l'ensemble des parties prenantes engagées en faveur de l'éducation verte? Monsieur Guillardi?
Well, thank you, Danieli. Merci beaucoup. To me, as I said, I think it's exciting times for climate education with the Greening Education Partnership, PISA, the role of NGOs. There are many things happening. I want to stress the central role of science education, which is really important, but also the social and emotional skills that need to be developed in our youth through active pedagogies, moving from anxiety to agency and the role of self-efficacy. I think this is really important. Of course, it has to be there in the curricula, but in all disciplines, we have to provide a systemic view for all our youth. And here the school and community approach, the whole school approach, the role of NGOs is absolutely essential. Teachers are the heart of the engine, clearly. They need quality professional development, they need quality education material, they need field support. And I think both for the teacher and the students, this climate and environmental education is there to nurture a sense of purpose and the capacity to imagine and build a better future for all. I think this is really what we're doing. This futures literacy is absolutely essential. This requires political will, piloting, research, and evaluation for country scale impact. And we're discussing impact. I'm very proud about what the OCE has been doing over the last 8 years. We've reached 150,000 teachers with that proper training, reaching close to 6 million students already, and counting, of course, when you train teachers. So I think we have the ways to scale by empowering and doing capacity building for the teachers and the education system. So thank you again for this great discussion.
Merci beaucoup. Professeur Calbous, votre message final de ce panel.
Message final sans être trop lent, mais peut-être deux idées clés qui nous semblent être intéressantes à garder en tête. C'est d'abord vraiment l'approche systémique des choses. Nous avons beaucoup d'acteurs. Nous avons la question du plaidoyer politique. Nous avons la question des formations des formateurs que nous avons beaucoup évoquée, la question pédagogique et recherche, d'ailleurs, qui sont liées. Et puis surtout, l'accompagnement des jeunes pour l'appropriation de ces questions d'éducation verte. Si aujourd'hui on a des politiques qui remettent en cause des évidences relatives au climat et relatives à toutes ces questions de survie, c'est qu'il n'y a pas eu cette sensibilisation dans l'enfance, à l'école, quelques années dans le passé. Donc l'approche vraiment systémique est importante, et puis l'approche adaptative. Il est très très important de pouvoir adapter nos méthodes pour que les pays qui n'ont pas le même niveau de développement, qui n'ont pas le même niveau de catastrophe, qui n'ont pas le même niveau économique, qui n'ont pas le même niveau de sensibilisation, puissent tous suivre la tendance générale, mais chacun à son rythme et avec ses capacités. Il est très important que... Et si l'approche adaptative et l'approche systémique vont de pair, il y aura une intériorisation de la question verte, et l'éducation verte ne serait plus un sujet, elle serait naturelle, et ça sera la norme que tout le monde suivra dans les prochaines années. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur le recteur, pour vos paroles très inspirantes. Et pour conclure, Madame Segers, votre message clé à la fin de ce panel.
Thank you. So all good things come in threes, so I'm going to say three things. First of all, be each other's allies. Because we often get caught in all kinds of discussions about differences between environmental education, climate education, education for sustainable development. But what connects us is a lot more important. And certainly the partnership is a great space to find and make allies. Secondly, we need to invest in evidence of impact, not only on the breadth of learner competences that are being developed through climate education, but also are we really educating for hope, for justice, for values? Without this evidence, we will not be able to continue to convince governments and donors. So also to the partnership and to UNESCO, you can play a phenomenal role in amplifying, sharing evidence. So please, we also count on you for that. And then I would say to all of us, keep up the good work. We know resources are constrained, but this is too important to give up. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup encore une fois, Madame Segers, pour vos mots finaux. Du coup, je vous remercie encore pour être très inspirant et surtout pour avoir donné votre point de vue très utile pour l'ensemble des parties prenantes engagées aujourd'hui dans l'éducation verte. Je vous remercie encore une fois pour votre participation à cette session consacrée au pilier 2 du partenariat. Et souvent pour résumer avant de conclure le panel, nous pourrons, je crois, retenir trois points essentiels de ce panel, c'est-à-dire que l'éducation verte doit être intégrée dans les curriculums à tous les niveaux éducatifs, avec le développement d'outils pédagogiques spécifiques et contextualisés. Les enseignants et les acteurs éducatifs jouent un rôle central tant dans le plaidoyer politique que dans la mise en œuvre sur le terrain. Et enfin, les ONG et les partenariats internationaux comme le GEP et l'UNESCO sont indispensables pour soutenir les initiatives locales et pour influencer les politiques éducatives. Ces échanges, en fait, ont mis en évidence la richesse des perspectives et la complémentarité des acteurs engagés dans la promotion d'une éducation verte. Et je vous remercie encore une fois, nos chers panélistes, M. Eric Guillardi, Professeur Zlim Kalbous et Mme Mosseger, pour votre participation et ainsi le public pour votre attention. I will now give the floor to the next panel on Pillar 3. Back to you, Cyril and Nisrine. Thank you very much.
Merci, merci Gabriele, et encore un grand merci aux différents intervenants de ce panel. Avant de passer sur le panel suivant, je voudrais rappeler nos participants que si vous avez envie d'échanger, n'hésitez pas à poser directement vos questions dans l'outil de questions-réponses que vous trouverez en bas de votre écran. Ça vous permettra d'échanger directement avec les différents intervenants qui ont également la possibilité de vous répondre. Donc n'hésitez pas à utiliser cet outil pour participer à la conversation. Notre prochaine session aborde le pilier 3 du partenariat, adapter la formation des enseignants et les capacités des systèmes éducatifs. Et si vous me permettez une image simpliste, je dirais qu'une école verte sans professeurs formés, c'est un bateau sans capitaine. Ce pilier répond à une question simple mais immense. Comment passer de l'expérimentation locale à la généralisation? Comment former des millions d'enseignants et non plus seulement quelques centaines? Pour guider cette réflexion, je suis ravi de passer le relais à Kathleen Ing, représentante officielle de Sulitest auprès de l'UNESCO et qui fut l'un des piliers de notre comité de pilotage pour ce forum. Kathleen va nous aider à comprendre comment évaluer les compétences et transformer durablement nos systèmes. Kathleen, je vous laisse la parole.
Bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Super. Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Thank you so much for joining this lovely session. And I saw a lot of excitement yesterday and discussions today about the importance of teacher training and systemic change in education systems. Yesterday there was also a question, specifically about this on how educators can be informed to ensure that good practices are transmitted to learners. So I'm hoping that today's excellent panelists are going to be able to answer that question for you. I am going to just come with a little bit of a preamble. Sustainability, higher education, teacher training has been something that's been happening for a long time. I think the first UN decade for education for sustainable development was actually 2004 to 2014, where there was actually a lot of activity happening, at least on the university front from a teacher training perspective. You had stuff like universities working with NGOs, working with community partners with regards to on-the-ground teaching and learning. We had the Disciplinary Associations Network for Sustainability, which is academic associations committed to education for a sustainable future so that people in specific disciplines can learn from each other about how to integrate sustainability into teaching, learning, research. And, the work continues now. You have universities with teaching labs on, leadership and learning for sustainability, for example, at McGill University, where I am currently working, where Dr. Blaine Harvey is looking for leverage points for transitioning towards collaborative and transdisciplinary models for research and practice. So throughout the talks that we've had so far, we've seen the importance of the multi-stakeholder approach, the importance of engaging an all-hands approach to systemic change, different ways of knowing, land-based learning, et cetera, And I think with this round, with the Greening Education Partnership now being led very strongly by UNESCO in implementation of the principles, I think this has going to be, and it has already been, a sea change in collectivity in our approach. So Katarina mentioned yesterday, for example, about how the GEP is working on the teacher training program. We've had questions come up about impact. So the GEP is going to have a dashboard, as Katarina mentioned. You know, my organization, Test, also has developed online tools to strengthen and massify sustainable development education. And I think our panelists today, we have the co-coordinators of the GEP Working Group 3 on green teacher education, teacher training and education systems. So I will have Sarah and Rike come and talk about, you know, the Working Group 3's activities and the tools that are being developed. I will then move on to Maëlys and Benoit to speak a little bit about teacher training and education systems sustainability in France to train up to 10,000 educators and university staff in sustainability. And then we'll move on to Paul Walsh from the SDSN, who is going to talk about the extensive degree of resources and activities that they are doing in this space. So first, we'll have the co-coordinators of Working Group 3 speak a little bit about the who, the why, the importance of greening teacher training and education systems. We have Sarah Beardmore, who heads the Global Partnership for Education's Strategic Partnerships and Capabilities team. She develops multi-stakeholder strategies and initiatives to address cross-sectoral challenges to children's well-being and education. That includes climate change, school nutrition, and violence. And she currently leads GPE's work in supporting climate-smart education systems. And that includes technical assistance to facilitating climate finance initiatives. And she has 20 years of experience internationally, including a decade as an advocacy specialist, civil society accountability funder, leading on policy advocacy and resource mobilization for child rights, economic justice, gender equality, material health, and Indigenous rights. Also from the GPE, we have Rike, who is a climate and education specialist there. She supports global and country level efforts to integrate climate resilience into education systems. She works across the Climate Smart Education Systems Initiative and the Building Resilience in Children and Communities through the education sector initiative, and she is helping partner countries to strengthen climate responsive policies, plans, and investments. So her work includes coordinating multi-stakeholder partnerships, supporting country work plans, mobilizing climate finance for education, and providing evidence generation and knowledge sharing across the GPE Secretariat and the wider partnership. So Sarah, Rike, I don't see Jennifer here, but you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And on behalf of all of the co-chairs from UNICEF, Education International, and the Global Partnership for Education, we're really delighted to be here today with you. We're going to try to pull through all of the different work that we've been doing in the working group under the Greening Education Partnership. But let me start with a simple point, which is that education systems cannot be climate ready if educators are not ready. Around the world, teachers, school leaders, and education support personnel are already responding to climate change, not as a future risk, but as a daily reality of their conditions. Climate change is already shaping how learning happens, where it happens, and in some cases, whether it happens at all. So we see this when heat waves disrupt school days, when floods and storms force schools to close, when educators are needing to support displaced learners, and when teachers are asked to navigate safety, well-being, and learning continuity under extreme pressure. Yet too often, educators are expected to do more in these contexts without the policies, protections, or resources needed to do so safely and sustainably. Climate change is absolutely accelerating the existing pressures across the education workforce. Educators are taking on expanded roles during crises. They already have often gendered caregiving responsibilities, which still fall disproportionately on women, and these intensify under conditions of climate emergencies. And in disrupted contexts, teachers are also exposed to safety risks, including more violence. So all of this is happening, unfortunately, at a time when education systems are facing converging crises, right? We have the worsening climate emergency, but there's also already a global teacher shortage. I think UNESCO has estimated that over 50 million additional teachers are needed by 2030. Growing expectations for education systems to respond to shocks, even though the policies, the coordination mechanisms, the data systems, and the financing are often not climate ready. So that's precisely the gap that the Greening Education Partnership's third pillar is designed to address, focusing on greening teacher training and education systems capacities. Pillar 3 focuses on strengthening education systems so they're climate ready, from policy and planning to finance and implementation, ensuring that teachers, school leaders, and education support personnel have the capacity, support, and conditions they need to sustain quality education in a changing climate. This work, guided by the Working Group 3, is co-chaired by GPE, UNICEF, and EI, and it also brings together governments, educators, unions, NGOs, and partners around the shared goal of placing educators at the heart of climate resilient education systems. So I'm going to turn to Reka, who's going to help us go through what Pillar 3 is about and what makes it distinct.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so let's move from the why to the what. And as the name also indicates, Pillar 3 is really centered on greening teacher training and education system capacities, covering everything from policy and planning to finance and implementation to really ensure that education systems are truly climate ready. So while Pillar 2 that we just heard about before addresses what is being taught, Pillar 3 addresses whether education systems are equipped to sustain climate action at scale. So at its very core, Pillar 3 is about enabling education systems to become more climate smart, meaning advancing on climate resilience and ensuring that teachers, education support personnel, and policymakers alike are trained and equipped to deliver greener education. And this approach recognizes that climate change cannot be treated as an add-on. It needs to be embedded in how educators are prepared, supported, and recognized across the entire system. So Pillar 3 also starts from a whole system perspective. Transforming education systems to be climate resilient and sustainable requires capacity at multiple levels. At the more individual level, we're talking about training of school leaders and teachers and policymakers on how to integrate climate change and sustainability into teaching and learning. School level capacity is about educators and the wider education workforce being able to translate climate commitments into daily practices. And system level capacity to advance greener policy, planning, financing, and coordination as well. So for ministries of education, this means having the support needed to integrate climate and environmental considerations into education strategies, sector plans, data systems, budgets, and also to strengthen coordinations with ministries that are responsible for climate and environment. For educators, it means better preparation through both pre-service and in-service training across all levels of education and across subjects too, as well as the funding, the tool, the time, the trust, and the working conditions required to provide quality climate education for all learners. So what makes Pillar 3 distinct is that it does not only focus on what educators should teach, but on whether education systems are set up to support them to do so sustainably, safely, and at scale. And this really reflects a core greening education partnership, and particularly Pillar 3 insight, which is that educators are not only implementers of climate policies, but they are also co-creators of climate resilient education systems. And therefore, investing in educator capacity, protection, and participation is both an education workforce strategy and a climate adaptation strategy. So, moving from the what to the how. To put these objectives of Pillar 3 into practice, GPE, together with UNICEF and Education International, the co-chairs of Working Group 3, we have developed a new policy toolkit called Educators at the Heart of Greening Education, a climate resilience toolkit for policymakers, which we're planning to launch April this year. So consider this also a little introduction and a little sneak peek to what the tool has to offer. The toolkit is designed for ministries of education and education sector stakeholders, but it's also highly relevant, of course, for NGOs and partners supporting implementation and policy dialogue on the ground. Its purpose is to support ministries of education in strengthening the climate resilience of the education systems by enabling educators, school leaders, and education support personnel to deliver continuous, equitable, and equality education even during climate-related disruptions. And it does so through 5 strategic educator-centered policy objectives that Sarah will tell you much more about in a bit. And these objectives, they together help ministries assess how well their systems are currently supporting educators both before, during, and after climate shocks. And it identifies practical entry points for reforms that are feasible within the context and the existing capacities and resources. And over to Sarah.
Thanks, Heike. So this reflection tool is really meant to be a practical guide for ministries to use to undertake a dialogue around the entry points in their system. So there are 5 key strategic objectives. Then together, these really help to define what climate resilient education systems require. So the first is supporting educators to provide quality climate change education. And that's ensuring that teachers have the training, resources, and pedagogical support to teach climate change effectively. The second is strengthening educators' capacity to maintain quality education during climate disruptions. And that's including alternative learning spaces, low-tech solutions, and clear roles during emergencies. The third objective is ensuring that educator and student safety and well-being during climate emergencies are protected. It's recognizing safety as protection from climate hazards and the heightened risks of violence and psychosocial harm during disruptions. The fourth strategic objective is about ensuring quality working conditions before, during, and after climate impacts. This includes addressing workloads, labor rights, burnout, and gendered caregiving burdens that fall disproportionately on educators. And then finally, a key element of the toolkit looks at how increasing educator participation in climate-related policy and social dialogue can be achieved. This is about enabling teachers and education personnel to shape climate and education policy, including in their participation in national planning policies. So by focusing on these strategic objectives, the aim is for ministries to be able to implement the policies and plans that are needed in consultation with teachers to help them ensure continuous, equitable, quality education for all before, during, and after climate disruptions. Heike, now you can go into a little bit more detail of the texture of what kinds of prompts the toolkit provides to ministries to reflect on.
Yes. So to give you a bit more details on some of the reflection questions, I'm going to take you through some examples that really showcases how the toolkit shifts the focus to be centered upon teachers and educators as such. So under the first objective, national policymakers are asked to reflect on to what extent climate change education is clearly and systematically embedded across national curricula, and also to what extent climate change education and climate literacy are systematically integrated into teacher education programs. When we move to the second objectives, they are asked to reflect on questions like, does the ministry regularly track how climate disruptions affect educators' ability to teach, and whether educators have access to practical reference material and training on teaching during climate-related disruptions? While the third and the fourth objectives respectively include questions as, do teachers, education support personnel, and school leaders receive systematic regular training on managing climate-related emergencies that are impacting students and educators? And do existing ministry guidelines for emergency situations explicitly acknowledge and recommend adequate rest periods for educators to pause, disconnect, and recover? And under the fifth and last objective, policymakers are, amongst others, asked to reflect on whether there are regular and institutionalized mechanisms that systematically involve educators and the representative unions meaningfully and early on in the development and in refining climate change related education and disaster response policies. I think these examples of reflections questions, they do really show, alongside with the 5 objectives of the toolkit, a shift from the focus of what teachers should do to what system must do to support teachers during climate-related disruptions. And at its core, the toolkit itself advances on one message, which is investing in educators is investing in climate resilience.
So the key for us is now that our toolkit has been developed and finalized, we need to get it into the hands of stakeholders at country level. So initially, we're going to be partnering to test the tool in real world contexts with the knowledge and innovation exchange platform of GPE to identify opportunities. And the KICS Learning Hub for Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific, which is hosted by NORAG, will be helping to pilot this tool. They essentially identified strong demand from countries to strengthen their capacities in climate change education. And so in response, the hub is hosting a 9-week learning cycle from February through April that's going to bring together national education teams from a number of countries. And the aim of the learning cycle is actually to build the capacity of country teams to identify entry points to strengthen climate-related strategies in education. And it's going to focus primarily on the first objective of the toolkit, which is on supporting teachers to deliver quality climate change education. And then through this process, the country teams will explore multifaceted support mechanisms that enable educators to deliver quality climate change education in practice. And that includes improved working conditions, strengthened social and policy dialogue within the national context. And the learning cycle is also going to support country teams to better understand how to address climate risks facing teachers and how to enable educators to provide relevant, contextual, place-based learning that strengthens learners' and communities' climate adaptation capacities. The aim is to get feedback from this experience working with these country teams and further strengthen the tool and our support to countries as we aim to roll out the support across more countries around the world. This is not just an effort of the Pillar 3 co-chairs and the KICS Hub, though. We really need to mobilize all of the stakeholders in education to become familiar with these concepts and these tools and really help to support a dialogue focusing on each of these objectives. So Heke, over to you for a bit more about the role of NGOs.
Yeah. So what has been very clear in the development of the toolkit itself, but also through the learning cycle, what Sarah is just touching upon here, is that Pillar 3 of the Greening Education Partnership really leverages the partnership for maximum impact. And NGOs have a very important role to play in this too, especially in translating the objectives of Pillar 3 and the policy toolkit from policy intent to actual action on the ground. From our perspective, the NGOs are essential partners because they support teacher training and continuous professional learning. You innovate in non-formal and community-based education. You can reach educators and learners in crisis-affected, fragile, and hard-to-reach contexts. NGOs bridge national policy framework with local realities and elevate educator voices as well, including women educators and marginalized groups whose experiences are often underrepresented in informal planning processes. So under Pillar 3, NGOs can play a particularly strategic role by aligning teacher-focused programs with national policy reform efforts, contributing to evidence and practice-based insights from implementation, supporting pilot initiatives that can inform system-level change, and co-developing solutions together with ministries, educators, education unions, and communities. So to wrap up, climate resilient education systems are not built by institutions alone, they're built by people. Across contexts, we see school leaders, teachers, and education support personnel already adapting, innovating, and leading in the face of climate disruptions. And Pillar 3 is our shared opportunity to ensure that educators are prepared, protected, valued, and meaningfully included in climate-related decision-making as well. Therefore, we invite NGOs and not only to help implement Pillar 3, but also to shape it alongside governments and educators themselves, bringing practice, evidence, and lived experience into the policy dialogue. Together, we can ensure that greening education does not become an added burden for educators, but a supported, sustainable, and empowering transformation. Because Pillar 3 does really remind us of a simple truth, that climate-ready education systems depend on climate-ready, protected, and empowered educators, and NGOs are a critical partner in making that possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Rika. That was excellent, and I think it responds to actually a lot of the concerns and questions that were being raised in the chat today and yesterday. So I am sure that you're going to get a bunch of NGO partners going to be reaching out to you, and I encourage all of our NGO partners and anyone who's interested to get in touch and join the GEP and help make this a reality, because it's not top down, bottom up, it's all of us. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to invite our next panelist. We have Mélisse from Sullytest and Benoît Gabriel from Université de Paris-Saclay, the Ecosys Joint Research Unit and Biosphere Graduate School. Mélisse is the coordinator of the Expandia project at Sullytest. She drives innovative initiatives to advance sustainable development education and skills assessment. She designs and implements multi-stakeholder programs, uniting public, private, and nonprofit actors to create collective impact. She has 15 years of experience in organizational consulting, partnership management, and communications. She combines business expertise with a passion for social innovation, and her career is rooted in co-creating solutions for social and solidarity economy and corporate social responsibility. And Benoît will be our partner. He is a research professor in sustainability science and bioeconomy. He's actually also acting as Pro-Vice Chancellor for Sustainable Development and Societal Responsibility for Paris-Saclay University, and he currently coordinates a European program in higher education and research, focusing on entrepreneurship and sustainable bioeconomy systems, and he teaches bioenergy in West Africa. He was a lead author in the bioenergy chapter of the Special Report on Renewable Energy of the IPCC, and he contributed to other assessments for UNEP and national agencies. So Mélisse and Benoît, c'est à vous.
Thanks a lot. I will share my screen. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to speak here on behalf of Sullytest. We work every day with higher education institutions to make sustainability a core part of teaching and learning. The project I coordinate, Expandia, aims to scale up the integration of sustainability in higher education by offering faculty members a comprehensive turnkey engagement and training program. Today, I'd like to share how we transform higher education through sustainable teaching and why this requires close collaboration between NGOs, universities, and initiatives like the GEP. NGOs have a unique role, bridge policy and practice. At Expandia, we help teachers turn strategies into daily reality. Our focus is clear, supporting faculty, so sustainability becomes a common thread across all disciplines. Let me introduce our project, Expandia. It's a flagship initiative of France's 2030 plan, led by a multi-stakeholder consortium with University of Paris-Saclay, Nantes University, and 2 local organizations, Ticket for Change and Campus de la Transition. The aim is ambitious: train 6,000 to 10,000 faculty members over 4 years. How? We co-create tailored strategies and tools aligned with SDGs. Sudetest is coordinating the project. Many of you may know us for measuring sustainability literacy worldwide. And Sudetest also co-chairs the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative with Endesa, Union University, and YESOLC. With Expandia, we bring this global expertise directly to universities. Our hypothesis is simple: to green curricula at scale, we must invest massively in faculty engagement and training. We need to make it easy and relevant for professors, whether they teach physics, law, or humanities, to integrate sustainability into their courses. Expandia is more than training, it's the complete change pathway for universities. The project contains 4 packages: engage, equip with tools, train to transform, and then measure. First package, engage. We raise awareness through conferences, workshops in universities. We also offer digital formats, articles, video, podcasts, etc. And we build a community of practice where professors can share experiences and challenges. Secondly, we equip with tools. So we develop a digital and personalized platform, including existing resources, and 3 practical tools we'll develop. First, it's an self-assessment tool, including tasks for teachers, so faculty can see where they stand with sustainability. Second, there is a discipline shaker to show how sustainability enriches every academic field. And third, we developed an AI-powered course scanner to analyze syllabi and spot SDG connections. Then we need to train to transform. We help faculty design and teach transformative curricula. We also train institutional champions to sustain this approach long term. And finally, we measure impact and share lessons. To make this real, I'd like now to bring a voice from the field. So I'm very pleased to hand over to Benoît Gabriel, Pro Vice Chancellor for Sustainable Development and Societal Responsibility at University Paris-Saclay. Benoît will share why they joined Expandia.
Thank you, Maëlys, and also for having me in this session. And hello, everyone. In this testimony, I will share how our university, Paris-Saclay in France, is tackling education for sustainable development, some key lessons we've learned so far, and how the project Expandia will leverage our actions. To set the scene, as you can see on the slide, Paris-Saclay is a multidisciplinary, research-intensive university, including 8,000 faculty, 50,000 students, and over 200 laboratories. It has a strong expertise in sustainability science and will also place at governance level a strong emphasis on sustainability with dedicated policies, goals, and teacher training programs. For instance, we currently run a one-day workshop on climate and biodiversity issues attended by 600 faculty and staff last year, plus online courses, support for upskilling, and a catalog of pedagogical resources. In terms of lessons learned so far, we've experienced that reaching out to all our faculty is a challenge. Some of them misunderstand offer or underestimate their knowledge gaps. We are lucky enough to rely on local pioneers, but we need to channel their efforts. For instance, this colleague who teaches physics bases teaching on sustainability on the famous Meadows report from 1972, so ignoring all the work from IPCC, among others. Success factors include a clear communication for our training offer, leadership support, adequate resources, and also innovative teaching practices. So why did we join Expandia? In this vast ESG challenge, large institutions like ours need external stimuli. Expandia brings the expertise of CityTest and other partners to speed up training, reach out to more faculty, and help us contribute to the project's participatory design. We'll test prototypes of training workshops and material. We'll share feedback from our staff and faculty, and of course, with an eye in international expansion, which is the topic of today. So in a nutshell, we're excited to collaborate to green our higher education programs and expand Expandia's impact. So thank you, Maëlys. Back over to you, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much, Benoit, for this concrete testimony. So the key message is clear. The community is clear. Expertise exists, but reaching all faculty beyond pioneers remains difficult. External partnerships with NGOs and programs can accelerate change at scale. This is why Expandia is more than a national project. It's a contribution to a global movement. We are launching a mapping of Train the Trainers initiatives both in France and internationally. Many of you here already train faculty and have inspiring tools to share. Our call to action is simple. If you train faculty in sustainability, if you have resources to share, or if you like to co-design solutions together, let's connect. Greening higher education is achievable and scalable, but only if we pool our knowledge, tools, and networks. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to our discussion.
Merci beaucoup, Benoît et Maëlys. Ça a été fort intéressant. C'est très, très excitant. Et je pense que les gens vont vraiment apprécier l'opportunité d'engager avec vous et de partager leur expérience, leurs ressources et de mobiliser la société envers comme l'éducation plus durable. I'll speak to English. I now would like to bring forward Paul Walsh from the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Paul is the Vice President of Education and Director of the SDG Academy at the SDSN. He is on secondment from University College Dublin, where he remains a full professor of global affairs and sustainable futures. He is director of the University College Dublin MSc in Sustainable Development in partnership with the SDG Academy, and he's held academic positions at Trinity College Dublin, KU Leuven, Harvard, and Columbia University. He's also held positions at the UN, the European Commission, the IMF, and the World Bank. Without further ado, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kathleen. And first of all, to show gratitude to you for putting together a lovely panel and great presentations thus far. And also, you know, SDSN is part of the NGO liaison, UNESCO liaison committee, and we're a very proud member, and it's been a great forum for the last 2 days. So I presume I can share my slides. I can, very good. So from the beginning. Oh, yeah. So first of all, SDSN was set up by Professor Jeffrey Sachs with Ban Ki-moon back in 2012. Then we were thinking about the post-2030 agenda. That feels like a long time ago now, but obviously we'll be coming up to 27, we'll be start thinking about the post-2030 agenda. So it's amazing how time moves on. But basically, it's a network of knowledge institutions. One part of SDSN is a network of about 2,000 knowledge institutions that try to promote partnerships to implement the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Climate Agreement, the Biodiversity Agreements, at all levels of governance. So inside universities, community level, local level, regional, global level. So that's their mandate. We do work, obviously, which is nice resources for teachers as well, or all educators, on data. So we do the SDG dashboard, for example, which monitors progress on all the SDG indicators across all countries. And what I'm responsible for is the SDG Academy, which is like let's call it the education wing of the SDG Academy. And we have offices in New York and Paris and Kuala Lumpur. Just very briefly about the SDG Academy, just to be aware, we probably best known for creating content. So originally we started off with Jeffrey Sachs's Ages of Sustainable Development, but since then we've a lot of courses, 65 courses, probably 5 or 6 with UNESCO, and these are what we call massive online courses that are free on edX for people to take them self-paced. Now there is small fees for certification, but generally they're free. What people may not realize is that all of this content is in our library. And this library, you can actually download the MP4s and you can edit and repurpose to your use. So there's lots of situations where schools or NGOs or governments are taking down this nicely produced material on nature and society and public policy and integrating it into their LMSs, into their HR systems, or into their degrees or LMSs for degrees, etc. So there's over 2 million minutes of content there that is very useful for obviously teaching how we live, or how can we be kind to nature and people going forward. We also realize just because you create content, it doesn't mean it's used. So we work in partnerships, and I'm going to describe a few, but obviously we work with governments, like we did an SDG leadership program with the UAE, for example, quite recently. We work with corporates. So with Swiss Re, we did a co-design of insurance and the SDGs, just trying to understand financing for sustainable development, co-created that as kind of a corporate run. We've worked with universities, which I'll describe in a second, in terms of deploying this content into their degrees and their programs. We also have a few communities of practice, so which obviously the liaison NGO, UNESCO liaison committee is one of them, but we're also in Mission 4.7, which is a partnership with UNESCO as well and other partners. And we do have a joint committee with UNESCO on implementing the 2019 Open Education Resource recommendation. And I want to come back to that in a second. And then lastly, we are doing a lot of work on thought leadership, where we tried to get across that, you can have all the plans and money, particularly in the education sector, for greening everything, but you've got to train people. You've got to train the staff, not just the teachers. You've got to train people in policy and everyone on how to actually bring a community, as you say, bottom up, top down, together to actually implement this greening of education in a general sense. So just 2 courses you might be interested in. I think this is we have a science panel on the Amazon. We have we're doing one on the Congo. We're doing one on the rainforest, run by Emma Torres. But we produced a very nice course, I think, using community stock footage, etc., and drone footage. And it's just a very nice science policy practice interface, bottom up, top down course on the Amazon. I produced one on revitalizing multilateralism for a sustainable future. So this was tracking Pact for the Future, all its policy documents and outcomes, even leading up to the World Social Summit. And again, it's just to get people to understand what the consensus was. And just to say, this is from education point of view, chapter 1 maybe didn't say a whole lot about education. I think it was quite good on the digital side. The Digital Compact was quite good on curriculum and education, but it did reference the political declaration that Ireland and Qatar negotiated the previous year, the midpoint review, the SDGs. And this is kind of my gold star and a North Star in a sense. I know there's UNESCO competencies and other things that you can adhere to, but it's just to show you that education for sustainability, it's a lifelong learning thing. It's preschool, K-12, university, labor force, no matter where you are, and you really have to, it's not just, so our philosophy is that it's a continuum of education from birth, if you like, to death, and that it's actually relevant for high schools as much as it is for university, and much as it is for professional development when you're in the labor force, no matter whether you're in the public or the private sector. And this was the statement which was again referenced to Impact for the Future. In a sense, what I've just described there is Mission 4.7, this idea of a continuum of education for sustainable development, you know, from pre to K-12 to university through the labor force. And the partners are with the Ban Ki-moon Center and UNESCO and Columbia University. I want to go back to just my discussions here, and I won't be too long. The demand side first. Okay, this is just looking at upskilling and reskilling teachers. Okay, so in Ireland, we have introduced a, just as an example, a new course for high school or the Leaving Cert called Climate Change and Sustainable Development. It's probably first of a kind. And of course, the teachers need reskilling and upskilling. So as part of professional development, we developed a pathway into a master's. So for example, if you go on to edX, take our courses by Rockstrom, Sachs, Metrics, etc., you can get a cert, a credit, which they pay for, the Irish government, for their teachers. And then there's a pathway to a micro-credential like a diploma, and then it's offset into fees and credits into the Master's in Sustainable Development in general. So they can have that type of accreditation for the work they do on personal development when they're actually trying to upskill and reskill, so they can take on a thing like a Leaving Cert subject on climate change and sustainable development. For years, it was taught in what's called transition years, and it was more transition years, more extracurricular. But now it's actually mainstreamed into the examination process and into the homeworks, etc. So there's a lot of work to be done to make sure the teachers are up and running for this, right? This course, though, just to say, is part of a consortium. We're setting one up in Dar es Salaam. We're setting one up in the University of West Indies. We're setting one up in Dubai, where we're encouraging educators at all levels. It doesn't matter whether you're a sustainability officer in a corporate, or you're in the UN system, or you're in a Department of Education and Government, or you're a teacher at K-12, or you're a university professor, etc. We're encouraging people to do this online Masters in Sustainable Development, just to actually upskill and reskill, so you have that kind of confidence, if you like, or ability to actually feel you can educate you know, the younger students or corporates or other educators on sustainable development. That's on the demand side. So what's really trying to say is that in the African Union, we've been saying, like, you really do have to standardize accreditation across Africa. In other words, if you're trained as a teacher in Zimbabwe, you should be able to teach all across the African Union or even into Europe. You do have to try and standardize the accreditation and micro-credentials, because this is a big deterrent. But also we're saying that even not necessarily the content, which I'll get into in a minute, but just even the standardization to allow even what I call digital or online training to actually come down and support access and inclusion. There has to be a standardization of semesters and structures, so that actually these supports can come in from the digital side and they can enhance what's happening in person or on the ground. But that takes a bit of work to standardize these things. And this has to be done in the European Union as much as it has to be done in the African Union. There's a lot of sovereignty over education and training and accreditation, which actually is a real blockade to demanding, if you like, knowledge, and to upskilling and reskilling and get accredited for this type of knowledge. So that should be worked on to standardize that. And then on the supply side, we are part of this UNESCO SDSN Joint Committee on Open Education Resources. So this is the idea that there's a right for people to create resources in their own language, indigenous knowledge. There's a right for people to be able to access this knowledge and deploy it freely, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of paywalls and there's a lot of incentives that don't allow this happen. So working with governments, working with the educators, working with the digital platforms, working with licensing, working with librarians on the metadata, because there's a library close to you everywhere in the world and most schools, etc. There is playbooks and ways of actually creating open education resources. And then that is actually essential for a curriculum, because a lot of us think the knowledge is there to be deployed in a particular context, in a particular country and school. That is false. the content has to be co-created. It's yet to be co-created. We're seeing this in Ireland when we're trying to create the homeworks and the outside school examples, etc. There's an awful lot of work to be done to take that knowledge and science that's there, but putting it into curriculum, putting it into homeworks, putting it into accessible education, and to make it obviously in the local context, in the local language, and co-create it by the stakeholders at that level. But we believe the digital transformation can be a big part of that. So that's why we had, as part of that committee, we had the Third World OER Congress in Dubai in November 24, where we talked about the opportunities that emerging technologies will have to create this ability to create this type of knowledge and knowledge equity and knowledge access, which is really important supply side features, so that you can go and train teachers and deploy it into accreditation and so on. So I'm going to stop there, and I really appreciate the invitation today, and the other presentations were excellent. And Kathleen, thank you very much again. And also thank you to the NGO Liaison Committee. I think it's great to be working with UNESCO and bringing all the NGOs in partnership with UNESCO together, to work together, stakeholders to green everything, states and teachers and curriculum and everything like that. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. The work that you're doing is so exciting. And you forgot to also mention the latest class, which is the Ages of Globalization that SCG Academy is offering.
Yeah.
So that's also a very good free class if anyone is interested. Yes, I think the resources that our panelists have provided are extremely, extremely interesting. You probably saw in the chat, people are asking for your contact information. So for sure, I think the resources and the training and the tools that you bring are going to be really valuable to everybody, especially with regards to, the whole point about, context and localization and, trying to work not only focusing on the global north, but working with co-creation as a key word. Nothing for us without us is really important for all of us. So thank you so much, Paul. And and just one more thing, just a little personal shout out from our group at the UN Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, which SDSN is also a member of, and UNESCO and a bunch of other UN agencies. We have an action group called the SDG Publishers Compact that are working to provide more movement from publications from universities to make that knowledge more accessible to community and practitioners, for example, through open access, through ensuring that we have plain language abstracts that are available, again, so that it'll facilitate that knowledge uptake by communities and getting that knowledge into the hands of practitioners. But I thank you all for actually keeping to time. We actually have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to just lob a question at all of you and feel free to answer. Some of you spoke about working in teacher training in all sorts of aspects. Do you want to highlight some of the work that you're doing for non-traditional learners, for Indigenous communities, for persons with disabilities, urban, rural, lower resource communities? Because I think there are a few questions that were in the chat that were about that. And another question with regards to lessons learned, what hasn't worked, what could go better, and what are your recommendations for others? 1 minute, very quickly. Popcorn.
I can jump in.
Going fine?
I can go very,
go ahead,
very quickly. But obviously as a university professor, and it's the challenge is, the SDGs, it was a beautiful phrase coined by David Dunn, who co-facilitated the SDGs with Kamau and Kenya, leave no one behind. And, we should actually start with the furthest behind first. But you do find yourself, even with these kind of free digital resources, just thinking about the digital divide. Like 50% of people just don't have access to the internet or to these things. And of course, that's why we're working with public libraries, because we always feel that you could close that to maybe 70% if people could arrive at their public libraries, but it's still leaving 30% behind, and it is a bit frustrating. The same sort of idea, even when we do the masters in Dar es Salaam, it'll benefit a lot of professionals, and that's great. And we do realize in a country like Tanzania, only a fraction, maybe 3% go to university. And there's a desperate need for professionals, in government, in all aspects of life. So, and you are empowering them to help others. But there's always a sense with education that there's a bit of a hierarchy. It's just so difficult. You have to really purposefully design things for disability or for access or for reaching as far behind as you can. But I'd still encourage, though, everyone that even if you are creating low-cost masters online or building capacities in low-resource regions or getting digital access as much as you can, that you're still doing something. But it is actually quite difficult to reach the furthest behind first. This is it's a mandate that's important, but it's hard. It's hard.
Thank you, Paul, for your honesty and transparency. And I'm sure, all of us together, all of us are necessary to kind of find solutions and to deliver the outcomes that we're looking for. And I would love to continue this conversation. It is very exciting, but we'll be in touch. And for all of you, if you could share your contacts in the chat, I think our participants would love to be in touch as well. Thank you again for your time. Very exciting. I encourage everyone to come and connect with the GEP, especially our NGO partners. And I will turn it over back to Cyril and Nisrim. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Merci Kathleen. Et ainsi donc se concluent nos différentes sessions thématiques. Je voudrais prendre un instant pour remercier chaleureusement nos intervenants de ces 2 dernières sessions, de l'intégration curriculaire à la formation systémique des enseignants. Vous nous avez tracé le chemin vers une éducation réellement transformatrice. Il est temps maintenant de passer à la session de clôture de notre forum avec une première intervention visant à mettre en lumière le point de vue de la jeunesse. Et j'ai ainsi le plaisir d'introduire Isabella Carrozza-Joa, membre du comité de liaison ONG UNESCO et responsable du groupe de travail jeunesse. L'action d'Isabella est la preuve vivante que la jeunesse n'est pas seulement le bénéficiaire de nos programmes, mais leur co-créateur. Isabella, c'est à toi.
Merci beaucoup, Cyril. Alors, je vais passer en anglais. Distinguished colleagues, excellencies, delegates of member states, representatives of UNESCO, NGOs, academia, and fellow youth. In the context of the conclusions of the successful 18th International Forum of NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, under the theme Greening Education Partnership, NGOs Engaged for Sustainable Impact, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Youth Working Group of the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee. Our working group brings together more than 80 young people aged 18 to 35, representing NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO. Our role is twofold: to ensure that youth, one of UNESCO's priority groups, are meaningfully reached and engaged, and to serve as a bridge between UNESCO's work program and the lived experience of young people active in civil society. We speak today on behalf of the youth who are actively engaged in mobilizing communities in support of UNESCO's mission, including in the area of greening education. For young people, greening education is more than an abstract policy goal. It is a question of social justice, equal opportunities, and a more sustainable future. I had the honor of participating in and representing the Youth Working Group at the 14th UNESCO Youth Forum, held in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, in October 25, which focused on the impact of climate change on young people. In the forum's conclusion, one of the most meaningful outcomes was the strengthened recognition of youth participation, including the explicit role of NGOs as key enablers of engagement. In particular, the second global recommendation on greening education called for the education systems that empower young people with climate-relevant knowledge, skills, and pathways, highlighting lifelong learning and vocational education as central to a just green transition. Today, in the context of the Greening Education Partnership Forum, we, youth from the NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, recognize and value the work carried out by the Greening Education Partnership. In particular, we strongly support its global targets for 2030, and we will also welcome and endorse the key official outputs of the partnership. As youth, we firmly believe that these goals and frameworks provide concrete and timely responses to the climate and environmental crisis by placing education at the center. In this regard, we call on JEEP members to ensure young people are more equally and meaningfully involved across the Greening Education Partnership. Our lived experience and knowledge must be recognized and integrated into the design of impactful and effective solutions for a common future. In particular, the voice of young people from minority communities, rural areas, low-income backgrounds, and those not in education, employment, or training need to be better included. These youth communities are often the most vulnerable to environmental degradation, yet they also hold valuable knowledge and perspectives that can contribute to the Green Education Partnership Initiative. Based on our experience, we would like to highlight 3 concrete steps for action. First, to strengthen the inclusion of youth in the governance and implementation of the Green Education Partnership. For example, with the creation of a youth working group within JEEP that includes structured roles for youth from NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, particularly those representing minorities and underrepresented groups. Second, in line with the second global recommendation of the 14th UNESCO Youth Forum on Greening Education, particularly item 2.1a, climate education within the Greening Education Partnership should be co-created with youth, rooted in regional realities, and supportive of intergenerational learning. And third, to prioritize JEEP initiatives that allow supportive environment, enabling youth to develop impactful initiatives and to be included in decision-making. Young people should be supported through financing, capacity building, peer learning, enabling policy, leadership opportunities, and collaborative space for co-creation. With these foundations in place, they can translate green education into tangible local action, developing practical skills, strengthening community resilience, and building sustainable livelihoods that drive lasting impact at the grassroots level. As young people, we stand ready to turn green education into action. We call on Green Education Partnership members to join us in a collective effort to co-create solutions that empower youth, strengthen green skills, and build sustainable livelihoods for a better tomorrow. Distinguished colleagues, excellencies, delegates of member states, representatives of UNESCO, NGOs, academia, and fellow youth, we thank you for your attention. And the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee Youth Working Group remains open and ready to support your future endeavors on greening education for future generations. Thank you.
Merci Isabella pour ces mots inspirants et merci pour ton dynamisme et le dynamisme du groupe jeunesse du comité de liaison. Chers participants, dans le chat, nous vous avons mis 2 liens Internet. Un lien pour le site du partenariat pour une éducation verte, si vous souhaitez approfondir et en savoir un peu plus. Également un autre lien, si votre ONG souhaite s'investir et rejoindre le partenariat, vous trouvez un lien vers le formulaire de candidature. Et maintenant, nous avons le plaisir de recevoir Monsieur Julien Pello, directeur de la division des partenariats à l'UNESCO. Julien incarne cette conviction que le partenariat est la nouvelle forme du leadership. Fort de près de 20 ans d'expérience aux Nations Unies, il veille à ce que la société civile ait une place centrale dans la planification stratégique de l'organisation. Julien, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Merci Cyril. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Great to see all of you. Well, I heard a lot. I didn't attend much of this forum, unfortunately, but I've heard great things. I've heard that there was a great turnout. I heard that the discussions were passionate and interesting and a lot of different perspectives. So, you know, this is really what we want to see with these forums, is this collective intelligence that we represent, that you represent together at work, and that really demonstrate the vitality of our official NGO network and the unique kind of added value that we have between UNESCO and our non-governmental partners. Because what is really good for this forum is to anchor all our work in your realities, your underground experience, your technical expertise, academic knowledge, community engagement, and how these global priorities that we carry at UNESCO can connect with local realities. And that is really where we really rely on you, our NGO family, to be not just implementing partners, but really to be our advocates, to be multipliers, to be connectors, to be catalysts for change. So we are very happy about this forum and about your engagement. I'd like to thank the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee for all the hard work that went into preparing for this forum. And I hope that this forum will also be a good example of other forums that we can do, the spaces that we can create to align ourselves with each other, to have mutual listening, to drive collective direction, and where we can really feel the value of this network coming together. So I would like to also thank our colleagues from the education sector and Chris in particular for jumping in the adventure. And we really hope that it's useful to your work, to the greening education agenda, and to the very already large and solid partnership that has been built around this agenda. And that is really important, not just between us here, civil society, and the UNESCO Secretariat, but it's really another way of demonstrating the value of multilateralism, of how when we bring people at the table, we can solve challenges together and we can drive new results together with the full engagement of civil society. So thank you so much again for your participation, and really look forward to the next steps.
Merci beaucoup Julien, et merci du soutien que vous et votre équipe apportez quotidiennement aux ONG et en particulier au comité de liaison. Ça nous aide vraiment beaucoup dans notre travail au quotidien. Comme nous l'avions précisé hier et comme Julien vient de le redire, ce forum a été organisé en étroite collaboration avec le secteur de l'éducation de l'UNESCO, et j'ai ainsi le plaisir d'accueillir Christopher Castle, directeur de la division pour la paix et le développement durable. Avec plus de 30 ans d'expérience, il incarne la continuité et la cohérence de l'action de l'UNESCO, de l'éducation à la santé jusqu'à cette vision holistique de l'éducation au climat. Christopher, la parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, dear friends, colleagues, partners. Throughout this meeting, we've engaged in a vital dialogue on the engagement of NGOs in greening education. And I want to echo my colleague Julian and others that this forum has benefited from excellent exchanges. As we're all aware, the climate crisis is a human challenge that touches upon every dimension of our societies, and we're here with a firm belief that education is one of the most powerful tools to respond. The Greening Education Partnership, launched in 2022 at the UN Transforming Education Summit, empowers learners with the skills and values to shape green, resilient, and just societies. And by advancing our green education efforts together, we directly implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, particularly SDG 4 on quality education and SDG 13 on climate action. Education builds the knowledge and skills necessary to apply sustainable principles into real solutions on the ground. Now, we have been focusing our discussions around the four main pillars of action of the Greening Education Partnership. And just to quickly remind, greening schools by implementing a whole institution approach, which includes green teaching and learning, climate-ready facilities, and community engagement. Greening curriculum by ensuring quality learning content on sustainability issues with a holistic approach. Greening teacher training and systems capacities by strengthening the capacity of education systems and policies. And greening communities by promoting climate resilience through lifelong learning. So over the past 2 days, our discussions have clearly shown that greening education requires systemic change, grounded in local context and sustained through strong partnerships. And of course, NGOs play a unique and strategic role in implementing our framework and vision on the ground, building policy and practice, empowering educators and learners, engaging communities, and ensuring that greening education advances equity and resilience. We've had some excellent and powerful examples throughout. And in particular, we just heard from Isabella, who told us in her remarks just now that youth must be placed at the very heart of decision-making for a sustainable future as they actively construct knowledge and inspire change. This was also the thematic focus of this year's International Day of Education, which we just held a couple of weeks ago. And at the heart of meaningful climate education lies robust and continuous training for teachers and education personnel. By strengthening their skills and knowledge, we can transform learning institutions into places of collective action, where educators play a central role in awareness raising and advocacy efforts. Partnership, of course, is key, as we just heard from Julian, and when communities co-design solutions with local partners and governments, working hand in hand with organizations, educators, and learners, we can see an empowerment with time, resources, and expertise that's needed in implementing education for sustainable development. Working within a partnership also adds value to small-scale or isolated efforts, and no effort is too small as they all contribute to the greater collective achievement. So NGOs are key actors in these efforts, as they have the ability to contextualize the work closely with all stakeholders in placing sustainability at the core of teaching and learning. The Greening Education Partnership is a commitment to systemic change, and this forum has provided a very valuable platform for alignment and collaborative efforts in bringing different partners together to strengthen our efforts in greening education. I'd like to emphasize the holistic and whole institution approach that combines education, partnerships, and community engagement, grounded in our approach of education for sustainable development. UNESCO remains committed to supporting the NGOs in advancing their important role in greening education. In line with our broader efforts to strengthen education for sustainable development, I'm also pleased to announce today that the UNESCO World Conference on ESD will be held later this year in partnership with the government of Kenya. This conference will provide the space for us to reflect on and celebrate the progress achieved in ESD implementation, while also looking ahead to how education can help shape the post-2030 agenda. Together, we'll have an opportunity to reaffirm our collective commitment to education as a powerful driver of a more sustainable future, and we aim to provide more information about this important conference in due course. Together, we can ensure that every learner is climate ready and that no community is left behind, and I want to thank everyone for their participation in this forum. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup Christopher, et à travers vous, merci à toute l'équipe de la section de l'éducation avec qui nous avons eu beaucoup de plaisir à travailler pour préparer ce forum, et je suis impatient d'imaginer le prochain. Pour son mot de conclusion, nous accueillons de nouveau la présidente de la Conférence internationale des ONG et du comité de liaison, Madame Sveltomira Stoyanova. Madame la Présidente, c'est à vous.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Before I give my final remarks, I would like to thank Julianne and Christopher for their interventions today and for the wonderful news, and also for the reminder that, yes, we are a family, and this is a joint collaboration and a joint initiative. So sometimes we pause and we reflect to take a moment to learn, and I hope that this forum has been exactly that, a time of reflection, both for the organizers, for all participants, and for our wonderful audience who has been really engaged throughout the last 2 days. I was reading the whole time the comments in the section, and I have to say I was quite impressed by the examples that were given. One particular thought has stayed with me throughout these past days, today and yesterday as well, that we are indeed facing educational challenges. And yet, as all of our speakers have shown, there are possibilities, there are solutions, and if I may, there is hope. But if we look even deeper beyond the educational challenges, we recognize that what we're truly facing, as it was underlined by ADG Giannini yesterday, are the human challenges. In this context, it is crucial to remember that all the practices and solutions presented here can and will only be effective if they're aligned with the social and cultural realities of the communities that they're meant to serve. Context matters, and understanding it is the key to making impact truly sustainable. As we move forward to the real question is, how do we walk the walk? How do we translate inspiration into consistent, tangible action? Implementation should be seen in its realistic outlines, adapted to local capacities, mindful of available resources, and grounded in partnership of all sorts. And when we speak of greening education, we have to understand it in the broader sense, not only as social capital, cultural richness, knowledge, financial means that was underlined as well today, trust, but most of all, human dignity and belonging. What we were talking about in the past 2 days is truly multidimensional, and it will determine whether our shared commitments truly take roots and flourish. And now for my final remarks, allow me to switch to Spanish. Espero que esos 2 días son un comienzo. Proclamémoslo con y con esperanza. Gracias a todas y a todos por formar parte de ese camino compartido. Les invito a mantenerse atentos a las próximas noticias sobre nuestro próximo foro. Será una nueva oportunidad para seguir construyendo juntos y unidos, afrontar los desafíos que nos esperan con confianza, determinación y un profundo sentido de propósito compartido. Muchas gracias. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Over to you, Cyril.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Mesdames et Messieurs, ce forum va se terminer, mais notre travail collectif ne fait que commencer. Nous avons vu durant ces 2 jours que les ONG contribuent activement à des projets visant à transformer l'éducation afin de mieux préparer les apprenants aux défis environnementaux et climatiques. Et nous croyons fermement que la sensibilisation aux enjeux du développement durable doit commencer dans les salles de classe pour avoir un impact durable sur la société. Au sein de l'organisation que je représente auprès de l'UNESCO, le Rotary International, nous avons une vision qui est qu'ensemble, nous voyons un monde où les gens se rassemblent et passent à l'action pour apporter un changement durable dans le monde, dans leur communauté et en eux-mêmes. Alors, en posant aujourd'hui cette pierre, gardons à l'esprit cette responsabilité qui nous unit. Je conclurai en citant l'un de mes auteurs préférés, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, tiré de Terre des Hommes. Être homme, c'est précisément être responsable. C'est connaître la honte en face d'une misère qui ne semblait pas venir de soi. C'est être fier d'une victoire que les camarades ont remportée. C'est sentir, en posant sa pierre, que l'on contribue à bâtir le monde. Merci à toutes et à tous pour votre engagement. Et pour le mot de la fin, c'est avec plaisir que je cède la parole à ma collègue coprésidente pour ce forum, Nisrine.
Merci Cyril. Que dire après tous ces mots de clôture? Comme tu l'as si bien dit, on vient à la fin de cet événement. Je tiens vraiment à remercier d'abord l'ensemble des participants et pour leurs questions, vraiment, euh, ils ont été présents avec nous ces 2 jours. Leurs questions nous ont interpellés, ont interpellé les panélistes sur différentes questions, mais surtout, on a vu pendant ces 2 jours comment est-ce qu'on pouvait regrouper des différents points de vue pour aller encore plus loin sur ces questions d'environnement, de changement climatique qui sont très, très importante. Ce webinaire nous a tous permis, moi aussi, j'ai beaucoup appris sur le partenariat pour une éducation verte et j'ai eu l'occasion de voir vraiment de très belles expériences qui ont été présentées. Alors, vraiment, je souhaiterais, comme on a beaucoup parlé de comment est-ce que le travail collectif peut donner des choses merveilleuses, ben, je vais conclure en mettant à l'honneur d'abord, comme j'ai dit, les participants, tous les intervenants qui nous ont donné de leur temps pour partager leurs apports, les ONG qui ont partagé leurs expériences, et aussi, bien sûr, le comité organisateur. Je vais citer les 3 ONG qui ont accompagné le comité de liaison dans l'organisation de ce webinaire, Siri Tivitis Putonen pour BPW International, Kathleen Ing pour Solitest, Gabriel Durieta pour l'AEF. Et je rappelle que ce comité de pilotage a compté 5 ONG qui sont partenaires officiels avec l'UNESCO, avec Cyril et moi-même dans ce comité. Un remerciement tout particulier à l'équipe du secrétariat de l'UNESCO qui nous a accompagnés pendant ce webinaire, Madame Katerina Agnanidou, bien sûr spécialiste de programme, aussi Anne, alors j'ai toujours, désolée, une difficulté à prononcer le nom de Anne. Alors, alors Anne, voilà, qui est également programme junior. Alors, excusez-moi, je reprends parce que je ne voudrais pas hacher, parce que c'est très, très important pour moi de reprendre les noms comme ils sont. Alors, Yuan, désolé, Yuan, alors qui est Junior Professional Officer, également à l'UNESCO, et bien entendu, Madame Sabina Colombo, la chef de division de l'unité pour les partenariats avec la société civile, et Luis Alberto, qui nous accompagne pendant notre réunion en tant que comité de liaison et qui est spécialiste des partenariats à l'UNESCO. Vraiment un grand merci à tous et j'espère qu'on vous reverra très très bientôt pour un autre webinaire prochainement. Merci.